Rafiza. Hey, family, welcome, welcome. It is February 21st, 6 p.m. In on the East Coast. That means all lines should be tuned in to All Politics are Local. We hope that you had a blessed, warm week. It's been cold out there. I do not like the cold weather, but just come in here while we have these warm thoughts and stimulate your brain and hopefully we'll get some great feedback from our audience. Today, our first guest is Miss Aliya Clark from New Direction, and she'll be introducing herself shortly. Our guests, all our hosts are here. Um, Father Austin, Miss Asia Norton, and Rafiza. So I'm
What's
just gonna start
up?
one question, and then we'll take it to Leah. Who's still dissecting Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance?
Oh, it's just
Are
it's
you
been
on to Scissor? Are you on to Scissor's Luther song? You trying to get that slide in?
I'm sorry, I'm still on Drake's lawsuit because that's a problem for me. And just like the First Amendment, how many people have he has he defamed throughout his music? And so we can't talk about Kendrick without talking about Drake at this point. And at the end
Absolutely.
of the day, that man is still rich. And like there's bigger problems in the world right now. That's what we doing?
Being hurt by a bar.
By a bar, girl. That's the bar right there. Being hurt by a bar. Period.
Rafiza, you still dissecting any
Still,
part of the performance?
still
Huh?
dissecting.
Still dissecting? And then Jonathan, before we talk to Miss Clark, you still dissecting?
oh, I'm an English teacher, so like one, I'm always dissecting, right? But also, yo, SZA was cool. Like she came
Whew.
on. Like I during the performance, you didn't really know how cool she was, and now
Yes.
she went viral with that one little segment. You can't unsee.
Well,
Yeah,
you know, the song that came off, the song that came out before that, her solo, that was real, real hot. And it's almost like Let's Do a Robbery, but it's more like a relationship. How she used that song, it was SZA, her lyrical, and then she straight out of Essex County, grew up in Maplewood,
Mhm.
where she went to Mary
East of
Lawn and
Detroit.
everything. Yeah, so it's beautiful. But she was giving vibes of Shaka Khan to me. She just killed that. Yes, this is bad. I want to see her.
And she just co-starred in the movie. And so this has kind of been like SZA year. Like it's the year of SZA, 2025, year of SZA. I love it.
Yes, ma'am. And Miss Clark, are you? Wait, been also welcome. New Direction. Thank you for being here again. We asked everybody a question. I'm gonna come to you. We asked, are you still dissecting Kendrick Lamar's performance? But we're gonna go to Aliya first. Aliya, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm
You
having
she can't
trouble
hear.
hearing.
Can you? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I you
Okay.
went in and out for a second.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, hi, I am Aliya. It's okay. Hi, I'm Aliya Clark. I work for New Direction 360, and I work with the ladies part of the New Direction 360, the ladies of New Direction, and I am the COO. I am the liaison for any type of mentorship for the young ladies. Anything that deals around public safety for high risk intervention, prevention, trauma recovery. I am also a community practitioner, just doing it all for public safety and the violence around our city and public safety.
In a unconventional way, one might say, but more so not, because that's how our communities were always there to help us have outlooks, have outreach to different things that we can do so that we won't end up in the streets and everything. So, what's some of the programs that you guys do over there? Miss Clark, can you hear me?
We are part of this. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We have a lot of different programs that we have a lot of programs that we run. We do a trauma to trust program. We do different trainings for conflict resolution. We do prevention and intervention, and we're like your violence interrupters. Um, we identify and treat high risk intervention, and we look at it as a cure, but it's never really a cure other than communication. So we do all of the targeting points for people who are like high risk and committing violence. Some kids that have mental health that need mental health services or job training or financial empowerment or educational tools, just being that liaison for a parent to child, because sometimes children, they don't listen to their parents, but they'll listen to someone that actually hears them. So we try to actually listen to the child and give them a chance to communicate. When they're high risk, there's an issue. There's always a root and an issue. So we work closely with those type of children at risk and high risk in our community, because we think that they are the most vital to our future.
Okay. Wait, there you
Now,
go. Go
like
ahead, Jonathan.
so you're part of the there's an ecosystem in Newark that deals with violence prevention, right? Like there are a lot fewer instances of homicide in the city of Newark than 10 years ago. There's been an entire movement to actually have violence interrupters and a series of organizations that add to the the violence prevention infrastructure. Where does New Direction fit into that? Like, do you work directly with the city? Are you an independent organization? How do you fit into the larger anti-violence infrastructure that has been put up or put in place in Newark?
Well, we are part of the ecosystem in Newark, not just Newark. We are Essex County based, so we are part of the ecosystems with the Office Violence Prevention and Trauma. We're part of the ecosystem with Brick City Peace Collective. We work with our movement was built strictly on, at the beginning, our founder built it on trying to push the gang folk culture in a different direction. And tap into the youth who think that they are gang members and want to come out here and disrupt and public safety. So our founder came home and decided to create this company where we can change the narrative of young individuals who may be at risk or high risk. New Direction can go in places that no one can go. The way we fit into this ecosystem is we were able to go in the neighborhoods and speak to different individuals who had control over their neighborhood and communicate with them and able them to have a voice to see what were the needs of their people. What can we do to have them step up and control their neighborhood? And it had to come from a credible messenger. New Directions are, I'm not saying no one else is credible messengers, but New Direction was credible messengers for the street, if that's what you want to call it, for our communities, for the inner city, for the urban community. Like, we can actually go where police can't go. We can go places that other public safety organizations can't go, because of the credible messengers that we have on our team. So a lot of things that we take on the violence, the real hard boots on the ground violence. When there's an incident or a situation, we go straight to it. We go to the root of the issue. Our president and our CEO, they get a call on the information. They go straight to the area to check, to prevent what's going to happen next, or to intervene so nothing don't happen. Once we get the word that something's going on, we try to bring two different groups together to communicate, because 9 out of 10 is always communication. It's always a misunderstanding. So we are credible because we go in places that no other organization can kind of go in.
I love it seems like you guys have different pillars, you can say. So you have this reactionary pillar where if something's happening, you're at the scene, you're on the site, you're giving assistance, but you also have this preventative aspect too. And so you're going out um, and getting access to youth that, as you framed, are at risk, and kind of giving this buy-in. And how do y'all do that? This, and I don't want to say like this generation necessarily, because every generation has its own niches, etc. But how do you get that buy-in? And so you did say that you have credibility, street credibility, etc. And so, but how do you use that to actually get the buy-in from the youth that are quote unquote at risk to buy into your program, the system and the structure?
Because of change, when you show the youth that you were like them or you once were them, and they know that you're credible and they can actually read who you are, you're not bull crapping them. A kid can know when you bull crapping them. They can
You
know when you just don't care about them or you really do care. So the buy-in comes in with they already know our stories, they already know who we are, and for us to live what we're trying to do now, it shows them that they can accomplish something. I'm just a young girl from Newark, New Jersey, Avon Avenue number blocks, who I've been stabbed, I've been shot, I've been ran over, but then I still persevered and was able to get 2 master's degrees, to go to college on full scholarship because I was the #1 player in the state of New Jersey at one time for basketball. So you have different avenues to able to draw them in with. You might get some of the kids that's athletic and you can draw the high risk athletic kids in, or you might get the gang member kids that you can draw those kids in because they can relate to being in a gang. It's all about relatable stories and meeting them where they are. If you have to go to their community, go get them. If you have to go down and figure it out for them and tell them, listen, but what we do not do, we don't go to the kid without an opportunity. We're not going there trying to pull them out their condition without something to counteract that and give them something to look forward to. And that's when our trainings come into play, because we're able to, working with the Office Violence and Prevention and Trauma and working with Brick City Peace Collective and UCC and some of our people like Dr. Jamila T. Davis and those type of individuals were able to actually grab different training sessions that we're able to pay the kids stipend to, whether it's to be in entrepreneurship programs, whether it's to do carpentry, whether it's to do electrician, nursing, things of that nature. We meet them where they are and we give them something to get out of where they are, because 9 out of 10 is always about money. And that's what messes up for them not able to get an education, because in their mind, they're always thinking about how they're going to eat the next day or how I'm going to get this the next day. So we kind of like focus on what we can do in the root of their issue. Each kid is case by case. So when we get a kid, we do an intake on the kid with the collaboration of the hub, and we work with them to find out what are the root of their issues. What do this kid needs? Because every kid is a different kid. So you have to find the needs of each child.
Aliya, how long have you been with New Direction?
I've been to New Direction. Khalil came home in 2019. I joined New Direction in 2020 of August.
And when did y'all started doing intakes in 2020?
We started doing intakes in 2021 when
Hmm.
we linked with the Office of Violence and Trauma Recovery under the leadership of Keisha Yuri at the time.
Okay.
We began to work with Ms. Yuri because of the relationship that she had with Shadi Dukes, our CEO. And he was able to be the bridge to the gap because Khalil was already on the ground doing the work when he came home. And then I joined in to hit the women's and the young ladies aspect of things as a credible messenger. So they brought me on the team to be a credible messenger for the ladies.
Okay, with that in mind, that first group of students, young people that you did an intake on, how are they doing today?
Well, the great thing about those kids today are that they are still with us. They are still in different programs. Their
Mhm.
grades have increased. Their violence. I spoke at a youth. I was a guest speaker for the youth. Graduation, the ceremony for the youth house ceremony, and I saw that 6 of my youth graduated off of from the youth house. They were able to get off the bracelet. They are working now. We have two that's in Job Corps. We have two that has just enrolled in Essex County College. We have different young men and women that's trying, and we're working on around now where we have about 50 kids right now that's in a Brick City Peace Collective Peace Academy that we're working with now, where they are learning the tools for their next step for high school. So each time we take about 25 to 50 at-risk youth, and we begin to work on them, and we track their process through their data, through their school records, through their parents, through their day-to-day movement and motor skills. We try to find out exactly where they were at the beginning on the chart to where they're at now. And a lot of our kids, I actually could say we have almost a 73% increase on our kids, decrease on our kids not being violent at this time. And these are the most violent kids that they say that are violent. So we saw almost a 73% decrease.
Beautiful. Okay. You have somebody else from New Directions with you. Who's that in the car?
I think that is my
Hey,
president.
how you doing? How
Great
you
and
guys doing?
good.
Uh,
How
uh,
you
uh,
doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Is
good.
this
I'm
my
good. I'm good.
Republic?
Hanging
This
in
my
there, just
Republican
moving around.
friend? Is this my Republican friend?
He better not be
No,
Republican
that's
because
great. No, no, that's great. That's
Wow.
yeah. Well, wait, no, Jonathan, you wasn't on last week.
Oh no, no.
No, great. I think that's great,
Hello?
right? Can you
no,
hear me?
that's Tut.
No, who was with you last week?
Tut, who was with you last
President?
week?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yes.
hear you. Who and your music? We can you
I
hear
think
us?
it was 8 the Great with them.
Eight to great. So while he's coming back in,
Mm.
Jonathan, he's a district leader. And so I was like, so how many signatures did you have to get? He's like, you want to know how I did it, or he's like, well, Democrats, da 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 da. He said, and then I looked over at the Republican ticket, and I only had to get two signatures, and he ran as a Republican.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, you better get that's right.
Okay.
That was beautiful. That's a T-shirt. President, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear y'all now.
Okay, how you doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. What's the good news you come to tell us today?
Hey, man, that God is good, man. And God is good all the time.
All the time.
That's
So
the
we
good
had our
news.
first question that you missed. Are you still dissecting the Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I'm definitely continue to dissect that. I didn't know what was going on until I start watching. I'm paying attention. I see the people in the blue over here. They lined up. Then I understood, what was going on. But that was good. That was good and creative for us, man.
Yeah. How many times did you go back and watch it?
After I found out what it was, probably 10.
Yeah. Okay. So what's going on over at New Direction? What you need us to know? And what I was saying before, Great to Eight was on last week, and he was telling me about how he ran for district leader. He just I'm just inspired. Y'all
Bro,
keep doing that, making sure people register to vote and
right.
be involved. That's what it
That,
is, and play
yeah,
both sides. That's
yeah,
that's masterful.
yeah. And that's the challenge for us because a lot of people from the streets, they don't really rock with politics. So they all like they don't understand it. That's why they don't deal with it because they don't understand it. But we know it runs the world because we tapped in now with the mayor and this work that we do. It gave us a whole different insight on politics and how it works and policies and stuff that affect the people on the ground. We get affected the most, and then we start complaining about our conditions, but don't ever get in position to be able to change our conditions if we ain't got a seat at the table. So we just thankful for the mayor to be able to bring us in and be able to educate us on politics and how it works, and just to be able to bring that to the streets so they could understand and get them to come out and vote, start voting more. That's our goal now, is to get a lot of the guys who was in prison that can vote to come out and vote now. And we just trying to work on educating them on it is and why would they vote and how could it help them. And with the mayor, he do a lot of stuff with reentry. He put a lot of
Hmm.
resources behind community violence intervention programs that helps the streets, help people from going to jail, save people from being shot, and all of the program that he got in place with the HRI organizations that Leah was talking about. That's all the rights for everybody in the streets that want to come and vote for him to get him in as a governor's position, because he can make more changes for us statewide, and some of the stuff we trying to do inside the prison system with the bros in there that ain't been getting treated fairly. So we want to get like a different prison commissioner. We want to get somebody that's going to be over the prison so they could be able to get us the right services in prison so we could be able to come home and be successful out here. And I know the mayor can help us with that. So that's our pitch to the streets and a lot of the bros coming home to try to get them to register to vote. If y'all want to help the bros behind the wall and be able to help more programs for us coming home from prison, because whoever else get in position ain't going to be interested in that, because we like the 1%, or we the product, you know what I mean? The ones that they're going to make policies for and be able to, get funding to take us out and put us in prisons. So we
Well,
want
it's funny. Senator Bernie Sanders said the other night that the top 3 richest people in the world, in the U.S., have more money than the bottom people. That's challenging. That's horrible.
Right.
Top 3 people, not 3%, 3 people have then the people that are on the ladder, and that's horrible. But to your point, I hope that you guys have a package that as soon as they have to meet them at the gate program and stuff like that. But as soon as somebody come in now, if you're on parole or probation, you can vote. Get them engaged and get them voting and get them thinking about what side, and like you said, and you said the key word, putting people in position so that you can name the people who you need to take care of your community.
Exactly.
Example, prisons commissioner and things like that. So that's powerful, brother.
So
Jonathan, I'm sorry, not Leah. Asia, any questions?
Yeah, not any questions right now, but just going off of reentry and folks coming back home from prison and being able to vote. That was a policy. That was actual law. And so it was like one of those ideas. And I remember like learning about this of how growing up, you just assume like, oh, it's just against the law for people that got a record to vote. And it wasn't necessarily against the law in terms of like the Constitution, whether it be the New Jersey Constitution or the U.S. Constitution, but it really was just like a legislative act. And then more recently, and shout out to Ryan Haga and the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, who actually fought for individuals with criminal records to be able to vote. And like and so talk about the power of voting, the power of advocacy down in Trenton or even DC, because how policies truly affect our everyday lives, we don't always see the connection, but it's there. And it's up to people like New Direction, Aliya, to spread that word and help bridge that connection to people, because people just feel as though like, oh, this is my life, but my life got nothing to do with over there. But it's like, no. What's going on over there affects your life directly.
Exactly.
And you know what?
That's what DEI is. DEI took away from us.
DEI? Oh, yes. And one more in Maine and Vermont, they vote behind the wall.
Right.
So keep that. That's big. That we have to talk. We have to do a whole segment on that, because it's. Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that is one of the things that in the curriculum that I have for debate, that's one of the things our 8th grades talk about, because I want them to see the connections between voting, lack of voting, and slavery, right? Like, because prison non-voting is a direct output of slavery.
Exactly.
And after, everyone knows 13th Amendment, it outlaws slavery except for if you've been incarcerated. And they literally are taking away the franchise as a way to take it away from our community. A lot of people are like, oh, well, if you want prisons voting, why would you want that? But if you take one person who's been incarcerated out of the community, most communities vote the same way. Most communities are going to like, you vote like your family votes. You vote like your community votes, right? Most people who live around each other and they're part of the same community, they're going to vote the same way, right? Or at least similar ways. And so you take multiple people out of our community, you disenfranchise them. You're not punishing the prisoner who may not have voted anyway. The person behind bars might not have voted at all in their life, but they're disconnected from their family. They're disconnected from their community. And now your community has fewer people who can vote. Even when they come home, you have fewer people who can vote. So it's a way to disempower entire communities.
Yeah. And so it's funny. When I was in law school, someone asked they were like, what's your favorite amendment? And I'm like, oh, the First Amendment. I really am a fan of like free speech. I really am. And the ability to practice whatever religion you want to. And I'm like, oh, the First Amendment. And it was like, not the 13th, not the 14th. I was like, you know what? You're right. Let me. The First Amendment is my third favorite amendment, but the 13th and the 14th. But that just goes back to like that civil education and teaching those things so that people can get a better grasp of it overall. And so that's what's up, that new direction is. That's kind of like a tenet of what y'all doing. So you have this reactionary where things are going on, boots on the ground, you go out, you assist, but then you have these preventative aspects, the preventative, working with the kids, given a holistic approach. And I love how you guys get at the root of the problem. You're not trying to put a Band-Aid on it. Aliya, you had mentioned that you're truly like, hey, the number one need is money. People are doing things because they're hungry. They don't have shelter. Y'all getting at the root of it. But then you have this political component. And when we say politics, I think sometimes people get deterred from that because it's like a dirty word in our community. But you have this activation of political engagement and connecting people that your life is affected by what's going on this other side of not the world, but like down in DC, down in Trenton. And so that's what's up. How did this all come about? Like
Yeah. What'd you say?
How did it all come about?
How did it all come about?
When you came home, I think. Go ahead. That's on you, President. How did this come about?
So New Direction kind of came about because like a police officer had lost his life at a high school. You know, and it was my sister was fighting some girl. We had got the call. It was in my area where I was from, when my set was formed at. We had came down there to make sure she was good. And we got into it with the some law enforcement officers that was down there. One of them got shot and killed. I got shot, and I was on trial for the death penalty. I was on trial for a police officer losing his life. I didn't do it. I wasn't a shooter, but I had homies with me, and they was trying to protect me. But you know, they put it on me, so I had to go to trial for it. And I had a co-defendant, another person that was with me, who had some witnesses identify him as a shooter too. So they put us both on trial together. And, you know, through the grace of God, they acquitted me of all the serious charges because it came out that I wasn't the shooter. I ain't have no weapon on me. It was a lot, you know, controversy in that case, how they played it and who they chose to go after. But it worked out for me. And I had
and also for us.
I was able to get acquitted on the charges. So when I was able to get acquitted on them charges, it made me popular in the prisons, popular in the gang coaches. Like, oh, beat the case. I was coming home. Everybody knew I was coming home. I knew I was coming home. They had gave me 30 years with an 18 step, and I got it reduced on the pill to 20 with 13. So I only had to do 14 years, and I was coming out. So when I knew I was hitting the streets, I was just educating myself, got around a lot of big homies in different prisons I went to. Went to 4 different prisons, seen the condition of the people, and able to tap in with a lot of the big homies who already was doing life sentences, never coming home. And they would just give me the education on what I needed to take the culture when I go home. And I just came out with New Direction for the Bloods and Crips, just to bring them together first, because that was most of our problems was, you know, the Bloods and the Crips in our city where most of the violence was coming from. And I knew I had leadership, I had influence, and I had a name from what happened. So I just wanted to use my power the right way. And I wanted to show them a better way. And that's how I was able to get credibility in the streets to be able to go to the hoods and highlight them, because I'm coming with, you know, credibility from where I came from. And I'm pushing something new, structured, that could push the homies in a better direction without dropping your flags.
All right. So thank you both for being with us this weekend. How we doing on time, Jonathan?
We have it's 6:30, so our guest is not here yet, but we'll probably be popping in shortly.
Okay.
Yep.
That means
can I just say this? Your story was giving like Malcolm X vibes, and so, and which I appreciate. He's one of my favorite historic figures, and so how you use your experience, or how the experience in prison, how it affects you.
His car.
If you want to put his car, he can.
A little busy right now.
I have something to say. The modern day,
wait, I'm gonna come. You're gonna have Agent Aliya 1 second, because I'm getting ready to give you the floor. That was appropriate because this is the weekend we'll be celebrating Malcolm X. That's why Zaid's not here. Aliya and President, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can the President hear me?
I think
Maybe. Okay.
Yes,
can
I
hear
can
you.
hear you. I can hear you, man.
Okay, here. Okay. Thank you. I know you were here, President, last week, and Leah, is this your first time being here?
Yes, this is the first time I'm being on your show. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. Know that you have a home here, and please feel free to come back. Don't wait for us to call you. You can call us and say, hey, we got some info you need to put out, and we'll make it happen. This is a hip hop political show.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
were about to say something. Go ahead and make that statement, and then after you make that statement, please tell me what hip hop artist, individual, or group do you listen to keep you motivated to do the work that you do every day. Aliya?
The first thing I was going to say is that we are in the modern day world now. So, in our New Direction circle, we believe that evolution will be televised. Back in the day, it was the revolution wouldn't be televised, but now evolution will be televised. That's why we got media, social media. We want the world to know that we're here to stay. African Americans, urban community, we're going to win again. We're going to rise, and we're going to be at that high percentile. We're going to be no longer the bottom of the toll. We're going to educate, empower all of our youth to know that there is wealth in anything that you do. You can come from the smallest neighborhoods in the hood, but you can still rise above your circumstances and your situations.
You still remember the question? Hip hop artists?
Yes,
Okay.
of course, I'm not like, to be honest with you, I'm a gospel person.
Okay.
So, my hip hop artists that I would listen to, I love Beyonce, but I'm more so Christian because my grandfather's a pastor and my grandma's evangelist, so I sing. So I like Lady Harmony. And the reason why I like Lady Harmony is because she ministers actually to your soul. She is like, when you pick up a Bible or the Quran, you look at that and you like, okay, I gotta eat today. Same way you go in the refrigerator, you eat food, you gotta feed your soul. Your soul need it too. So as I
Yep.
begin to start my day, I need to hear positive affirmations. I can't hear hip hop and killing this and come over here and shake booty over here. I'm not into that. I'm more so into Lady Harmony, where she's telling me I'm gonna win, or I'm listening to Karan Hawthorne and she's telling me don't give up.
I
You
got.
know, I need
We are running out of time for this segment,
okay.
so
But
we're
yeah,
just trying to
that's
get
it. That's what I
the
need.
audience.
I need that love. I need that God in me.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go. Corinna is okay. President, who you listening to?
Tupac, Nipsey Hussle, Lil Durk, me. I got it's one more that I got. Kendrick Lamar now. I
Yeah.
like Kendrick
Okay.
Lamar.
All
Yeah.
right. Like as I said, please don't be a stranger and don't wait for us to call. Okay.
No doubt. Yeah, be
Thank you for
tapping in next
having
week.
us.
I got
Thank.
some of my brothers, each one teach one gonna come on about his
Hey
program he's
Kelly.
doing with you.
Hey
We're gonna bring
Councilman.
him on next week.
Y'all know
Yo, what
that
up,
dude
Leah?
over
What
there
up,
to
Chuck?
That's our brother.
the
There you go. The
yeah.
big dog, Councilman
Hey,
Dupré.
yo, if y'all not in tune with New Direction is doing, y'all please have to get in tune with the movement because I'm super proud of them for just
Word.
pushing peace, pushing our city forward. Just like the
Real.
sister Leah said, they are the evolution will be televised and it's gonna
Yup.
start with New Direction for real.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. And
All right.
and and thank you. Right. Like
Thank
you
you.
mentioned Nipsey Hussle. I
Thank
was
you.
just listening, and Kendrick
Yeah,
Lamar.
rest
I
in
was
peace
just
to
listening
Nip,
to
man.
the
Miss
Heart
my
the
brother.
Heart
Yeah.
Part 5 earlier today. That's
What
become my favorite.
let's see. Okay. Well, thank you, new director. Thank you, Prez, and thank you, Leah. We're looking forward
Thank
to seeing
you.
you
See
back
you
soon. Okay.
soon.
All
All
right.
Take
See
right.
you
care.
guys soon.
Bye
Love
bye.
y'all. Peace.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Salute to
Councilman, welcome. The hardest working
hey.
councilman since I've not been in office. What's
How
going on?
are you? How are
I'm
you?
good. I'm good.
Always
How you
good to see
doing?
you and hear your voice.
Yeah.
I'm good. I would be lying if I say, some days I don't feel beat up, but a boxer can't complain about being in the ring and getting punches thrown at him or getting punched on. You know what I mean? He's a boxer. He's in the ring. I am a councilman in a tough city, but a great,
Yes.
wonderful city like Newark, New Jersey. So other than that, there's no complaints because it's become a regularity.
And you represent
Yes. And
a great section of Newark. I love the West Ward.
West.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I
And
love Newark. I love my city. I come from hip hop in my group Lords of the Underground. My DJ is in a beautiful mansion in Miami. I just got off the phone with Funk, who is my rap partner, who is in North California, but he just flew to Europe to purchase another property. They like, why are you staying in Newark? And I said, because it's bigger than me. You
And
know,
they'll be back. That's what's
and I
but
love.
can you still kick your leg up like you do when you performing?
Hey, I try. It hurt. It feel a little different, but I try to get it, and it might not go as high as it used to, but I still try it.
And Councilman, we started to show off just
What up, Ed?
asking.
Hey, Doodle. The Westward just got a new resident. You got a baby.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Raz.
I'm surprised you don't hear him crying. I just gave him to his mother, so you know. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you,
That's
man.
great.
That's my dude. You know, like I've always said, it's bigger than me. Now it feels really bigger than me.
Yes. I've been asking everybody this question. Are you still dissecting Kendrick Lamar's? Now, I really want to hear what you have to say because you probably got it on the first take. Are you still dissecting his performance?
I'm not still dissecting it. I think that the world is dissecting it. You know, let me just preempt that by saying this. I love Kendrick Lamar, right? But there's so many other Kendrick Lamars in other artists that we are not paying attention to, right? And I think that's hip hop. That's an MC. We say things for you to decipher and get it later because hip hop was a language where we talked in code anyway because we didn't think that people got the culture. So the graffiti artists put what was going on, you know, and sent messages on the walls and on the trains because the gangs wouldn't allow us to go to certain areas and locations. The MCs were talking code like that's my B-boy, that's my B-girl, that's, you know, and things of that nature because we didn't want people who were not of the culture to understand what we were talking about anyway because we were talking about the people who were in our face, you know, and not allowing us to move forward by holding us back. So when I see an artist like Kendrick Lamar, I put my hands up and yell touchdown. Because now he's on the biggest stage in America of things like the Super Bowl, talking that code language, talking that verbiage that we've been talking in hip hop for years. So salute to him.
Asia?
So when you said code language, I'm going back to slavery and how just us as Black people, we always spoke in code. One, to protect ourselves, to protect our families, to move the needle forward, even through the civil rights era. Like we just spoke through code. And I appreciate you pulling that from Kendrick's performance at during the Super Bowl. And also just shout out, you're such an artist who went through because you're already like, you're giving props to an artist while also trying to like bring light to other artists. You're such a, and I appreciate that because there truly are a lot of great artists out there that we don't know about that are more local centered in their specific their areas, communities, neighborhoods throughout the country, even the world, because hip hop is no longer like isolated in the US. Like the work that they're doing in South Africa around hip hop is beautiful in other parts of the world. And so, but as Black folks, we always spoke in code. It's one of the ways that we survived in this country so long. One of the ways.
Surprised if Kendrick had rice in his braids at the performance.
I love that.
And if you ask him, he might say he did. You know what I mean?
That's what you hear.
But I love it, man. I love that it is being embraced in such a way. You know, an artist is not an artist unless he can display his artistry in a way that is understood by other artists. And the people who don't understand it, they've always put Black and brown art on a pedestal because they thought it was entertaining and it was funny. And sometimes it was just a way to say the blueprint to the way out is over there. And if I sing it, the blueprint to the way out, they don't know that we tell them
Shucking and jiving.
get out of
Singing,
here, go
shucking
to the
and
left,
jiving.
make a right by the river. And, you know, so I just love what he's doing. I love that other artists are dissecting it and trying to, because I think that it will inspire, right? And not just influence. Influence is very, very powerful, right? But I think when you're under the influence of anything or anyone, it's just that you're under the influence. So you're not really yourself, right? But when you're inspired by something, you're in spirit with it. You're of God with it. You want to add on, you want to build onto it. So I hope people, there's some who will be influenced who are even not of the culture by Kendrick. And that's beautiful because influence is powerful. But the ones who are inspired by it, they're going to carry his message on further than he probably couldn't even imagine.
And I think like Tupac had like said something similar, that like he won't be the person to actually like do the change, but he's going to inspire the person or the people that are going to do the change. And so it's beautiful how hip hop culture in general just always have these circular moments. And so you can see different patterns. You can see legacies continuing on with different artists. And so it's really truly like a beautiful thing to be a part of.
I'm glad you spoke about Tupac, because some people realize it. No, I think John might know, but Tupac is part of the reason why I ran for city government. Tupac is part of the reason why I thought of it not to be robbery to throw my hat to become some type of elected official. Tupac is the reason that I have not moved out of, one of the reasons that I have not moved out of Newark, New Jersey.
So you're exactly what he was talking about.
I mean, so in Orlando, Florida in 1992, Tupac and I had probably about a 2 to 3 hour conversation about all of this stuff. Tupac said to me, "Go back, don't move out of your city." He said, he said so many things, but to fast forward, he said that we might have to do something that we don't want to do as hip hop artists, and that's become legislators. And I was like, man, I'm a rapper. Like, legislator, what is you talking about? I almost didn't know what he meant, And he said, yeah, man. He said, because if we don't make the laws for us, they will be made for us. And I just thought that was just so before his time. I think we were 20 years old at this time. And just to hear him talk the way my other friends were not talking was just unbelievable. It was inspiring. Everything that Tupac asked of me in that hotel room in Orlando, Florida in 1992, I've done. He said, start a nonprofit organization. I started 2 nonprofit organizations since then. He said, don't leave your city. I did not leave my city. And big ups to Ras Baraka Sr., because he asked me not to leave too. He told me to put my bucket where I lay. So these are people who that make me feel, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't go away to acquire the knowledge. I'm not saying don't go away to get some other experiences. I'm not even saying don't have a summer home somewhere, but don't leave the core, because if you're, like Mary said, if your superheroes leave where you are from, then they have to utilize their superpowers from a distance. And that's cool, right? If you're strong enough to do that, like a Queen Latifah, like a Shaquille O'Neal, that's beautiful. We love you. But they're not going to know Miss Johnson has a rodent problem on 19th Street. They're just going to hear it from hearsay. But as me, I can look her in the face. I can see the rodents running across the street or running in her backyard. I can be in her face. I can be there to help stop it. And even to give another example, when you have those superpowers, let's say if I was a brain surgeon and I went away to acquire the knowledge to become the best brain surgeon in the country, if people need my expertise and I take it to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, then I've just changed the economic developments of restaurants, hotels, Airbnbs, that hospital where I am doing my work, because people have to come to me to get my expertise. But if I take that to University Hospital, Rutgers Hospital, wherever, if I
North Beth Israel, I'm from the South.
Beth Israel, right? Yeah, that's right. Let's talk about the South Ward. Beth Israel, Sarah Mass. If I take it to anywhere in New Jersey, especially anywhere in Newark, then I've just done that same change right in my own city. So pitch your bucket where you lay. A lot of times as youngsters, I wanted to make it out, right? That's our thing. And you probably feel this too, Asia. Like when we're younger, we're like, I want to make it out. I want to make it out. And if you go to any high school or school in our city, that's what they want to do. They want to make it out. But it's not really, as I started to have success with Lords of the Underground and we traveled the world, I've been so many beautiful places, made a lot of money doing my art. I realized that it's not about making it out. It's about making where you're from better. It's not like Miami doesn't have a bad place, but you still see people say, I'm going to Miami this weekend, right? It's
Listen,
not,
every place has that place.
yes, every place
Every
has
place.
that place, but it's about making where you're from better. Just like our mayor says, let's reimagine this state.
And that leads us right into like part of the reason why I really wanted you here, right? Like we have
It wasn't for my first question. I'm sorry.
that's all right, but it was a good first question, right? But we have an election coming up for governor, and we have potential history to be made. I know that you are one of the surrogates for the mayor, and I think that sometimes hearing what people have to say and different perspectives is really good, right? I do think that this is an incredibly important election. You are the first nationally elected person who of the hip hop generation or hip hop artist, right? You're the
Right.
first nationally elected platinum selling hip hop artist.
Right.
Why is it important that people come out and support Ras for governor?
I think it's important because the word reimagine to some people, right? You might think that it's become cliche. But let me tell you why it's not cliche with the mayor, Ras Baraka, our future governor. It's not cliche because when you think about our state, New Jersey, right? New Jersey, it's a state that has been divided in my eyes. You have North Jersey, you have South Jersey, and you have Central Jersey, right? So you have North Jersey who kind of reminisce of living the lines of in association with New York City, the Big Apple. And that Big Apple can be overshadowing at times, right? And then you have South Jersey, which is remnant of Philadelphia. And a big city like Philadelphia can be overshadowing at times too. And Central Jersey is half of them are roll with North Jersey, half of them roll with South Jersey. So when you reimagine, right, you have to think about things differently. Think about unifying a state. Unify our state. Think about it in unity. If you think about what Mayor Baraka has done in Newark, New Jersey, when we live in being an executive of wards that have been in silos for so many years and bringing some unity to that, I know that he can do it. If he can do it in a city like Newark, New Jersey, just like former mayor, the great Kenneth Gibson said, how Newark goes, the nation will follow. And I think that how Newark goes, the state will follow. And I'm talking about reimagining us having unity. Think about that. If we're not a state divided, if we're not a state divided with race, if we're not a state divided with gender, if we're not a state divided, think about how powerful this state can be across the nation. And it's going to take something different. It's going to take an executive who has been battle tested. Mayor Baraka has been battle tested.
And I think part of the message that you're talking about goes to the ability of him to speak to different people, right? Like
most definitely.
When you're looking at what the Democratic Party doesn't have, the Democratic Party has a very difficult time speaking to Black men, has a very difficult time to speaking to working class men, right? And men overall. The fact that he had men's meetings was nationally, especially for the Democratic Party, way ahead of the curve. Munira just posted what Trump did today with Alice Johnson and the pardons are, right? I think that is something that every Democrat has to watch and wonder why we weren't ahead on that.
I agree.
We have done so much positive work on violence prevention that Democrats didn't run on. Like, why wasn't Ras put out front and center in the national campaign? I think that had he been center of the national campaign for what Democrats stand for and what they can do, I think it might have been different. because I think that gender gap would have been less.
Councilman, were you at the Democratic convention?
No, I wasn't there.
You didn't go? Okay.
No.
I was going to ask, how did they, I'm sorry, Jonathan, I just wanted to see, because but go ahead, I'm sorry.
I agree with you, John.
So I was going to ask, what do you think about that, especially in terms of the fresh look that he gives to the Democratic Party in dealing with the party's actual weaknesses? Because I think he could speak to white working class people, because his message seems to be, in New Jersey, there's enough for all of us to do well. Right. We just need to stop fighting each other over issues of race. We need to stop pretending that immigrants are killing people all over the place, because in New York, that's just not the case. Whenever he's speaking, you get an understanding that he's not just trying to like pie in the sky unify everybody. He's just saying, look, we are a very wealthy state that is very wealthy on the top and very poor on the bottom. And poor white people, working class white people, middle class white people all have the same problems with housing. We have these same problems because we don't look at these things collectively. If we did, we'd recognize that we can all do well, as opposed to pretend that we need to fight with one another and take money away from each other, and that the people who don't have are actually our enemies. That's just not the case, because in New Jersey, we have enough where all of us can do well if we come together.
I do believe that. That's why I spoke about unity with our mayor, to unify our state. I just believe sometimes when people say things that are so foreign to their ears, that they look at it like it's something totally different, and it is not. I think that because Mayor Baraka speaks about things that certain counties, certain cities have never had the experience of dealing with or going through, it sounds foreign. Or as the New York Times said, it sounds radical. And I don't think that our mayor is speaking radically about anything. I think he's speaking to the point. I think he's speaking about experiences that he's experienced with his constituents and his residents of Newark, New Jersey. And when he talk about housing, he's talking about dealing with them directly. And when you go to other counties and when you go to these other cities, it's not even an issue for them. And if they're not going to deal with it in their own county, if they're in their own city, then it's not put on a level that is heard all around the state of New Jersey. But when it happens in Newark, it's heard around because we deal with it. We deal with housing. We deal with changing lead service lines that people said it would take 10 years to deal with it. We deal with crime and it being the lowest that it has ever been, has been in 61 years or something like that, or 61%. Excuse me. And we deal with it that way. So I don't think that the other counties, the other executives that are campaigning for this seat has had to deal with those issues, has had to deal with those concerns. And that's why Mayor Baraka can speak to those people and have elderly white women come up to him and say, I witnessed this myself in New Brunswick at a debate, and say, I've never heard a gentleman speak like you before.
So eloquently. Mm-hmm.
And
passionate, and because he's coming from as you spoke to earlier, a sincere place. You can feel it. It's not, it may be, practice or whatever, but it's definitely, Raz leaves himself right there at the podium every time he speaks. So
Donna, too, I believe this too, and I know this from even running my campaign for the West Ward. Donna, I can come to you and I can speak about your home. And I can speak about the exterior of your home and the block that it's on and the nostalgia that surrounds your home.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody's going to come and say, yeah, but you didn't mention how Donna cooks those biscuits on Sundays morning and give them out. You don't realize that her basement is not just a basement, that it's a library, and she offers youth in there on weekends and takes care of them. Like, that is a different, we're talking about the same block, we're talking about the same house.
Mm-hmm.
The difference. Raz is not just speaking about New Jersey's exterior, he's speaking about New Jersey's interior. And that's what other candidates cannot do.
What what do we need to do different? Essex County always votes at 33%, in a 33% range. You said as North goes, so as what did Mayor Gibson say as North goes? So
So is the nation.
it's the
Right.
nation. In terms of election for our state, I believe if we can pull off Essex County, but that means the oranges, us coming out and voting like we did in 2008,
For
and 2000, yeah, for
Trump.
2012, because what to keep that momentum up, you know, and Barack inspired people because he built from the bottom up. How do we get that back? I was so surprised. I thought if we had lines all day when he ran, when you had a black woman running, I thought it was going to be double the lines, and it just didn't happen. What do we need to do to reinvigorate our community that this is an important thing to do? You have to be a part of this process.
We need a black Elon Musk. No, I'm only no, but you know, that was just a joke. But seriously though, I believe that we have to want to be included as people, right? We have to make sure that we look for policies, and I believe the mayor has to point this out, and I believe he does it in a good way that includes us, right? There has to be inclusive policies when it comes to economics growth, when it comes to housing accessibility, when it comes to things that are a reality to living. When you're in a place where eggs are $9 and milk is close to it, you know, you have to deal with people and include them in a way when it comes to housing, that they don't have to just work just to have a roof over their head, but they can work to sleep there and to enjoy themselves, to feed their families. You have to include them in healthcare that's affordable, housing that's affordable. You have to make sure that they are included in the process and stick by your word, because that's what it's about. It's about equity. The person who can really balance the equity and show that this state is unbalanced and that we all need to be equal, I think that if he can relay that message in a way to make people understand that it is the truth, we will have numbers that come out unbelievably more like they did for Obama.
Also, just like a sidebar, when you talk about equity, because sometimes people believe they're like trigger words. And so when you mention New York Times saying radical, right? Like
Yep.
radical, DEI, like those are trigger words instead of saying like black or Hispanic,
Right.
like
Oh,
trigger
yeah.
words. And so when you talk about equity, it's shifting the idea from this is a race thing versus this is a class thing. And so New Jersey overall, we're more similar in class than in race. And so, as you said before, what the mayor can do, or what he's trying to do, is have people seeing it. It's hard to live in a colorblind society that is based on colorfulness, but like
Right.
trying to helping people to see the vision of, no, we are of the same. We have our interests are more aligned than not. And that takes time, because this is not something that happened back in the 90s or the 80s. This is literally centuries. Like the country's original sin was based on this, and how slave owners made sure that the white lower class at the time associated themselves with them than blacks, which we all know there are more similarities in terms of issues between blacks and whites of a certain class. And so it's one of those messagings that it's necessary to move the needle forward, but it's also hard because, again, this is not overnight.
Right.
And if there's any suggestion that I would ever give the mayor, would be to continue and to be even more blunt in his conversation.
Yes, John.
Because he has to name, like, no, like this message is for poor white people in the city, on the state, right? This message is for working class white people. Like call it out. right? Because I think that we're already there. Trump has already put it all the way there, right? It's the thing that's there in the room. And if you don't speak it, then people won't hear it, right? They'll think something else. Like, it's about class, it's about race, and it's about the people who try to divide us based on those things. When, yes, once you mention it, then you're like, and he does this so beautifully. You have the situation with housing in your district. You have the situation. We have this in Newark. And you think we're different because you're scared of us because we're Black, and you're scared of me because I'm Black.
Right.
But I have more of your interest than any white politician in here because of I actually look at the things that are hurting you.
Right.
We're not fighting each other. They want you to want you to think Black people are the boogeyman. We're not the boogeyman. We're actually have more in common with you. And if you recognized it, we all have more, as opposed to having the people at the top keep us fighting each other so that we all have less.
I totally agree. You know, I just believe that he's an executive, like I said earlier, who's been battle tested, unlike some of the candidates that are aligned with running for governor. And what's the difference between the number blocks here in Newark, New Jersey, or those areas that we consider some problem areas, than the actual trailer parks or white poor people? And I think that if we can show that there are similarities in those areas, and that we need to participate with each other and collaborate with each other, I think as us coming together as a collective, we can start to unite this state, change this state, and bring something to the governor's office that has never been seen before.
Well, thank you so much for coming on again. You are a regular on our show.
Man, I love you guys, man. Thank you for real. Donna K.
Yeah, what's that? What music? Who you listening to while you out there doing that work, having babies and all that?
Man, right? I'm listening.
Can't be the same two songs. So,
Say, correct her. Having a baby.
Having a baby. Thank you.
And shout out to my little man, Legend, man.
Beautiful.
I'm listening to Cosa Nostra. Oh man, the 4-man group. We call them the Coast. I think that their energy, I feel like they're my grandsons when it comes to rap. You know, they have that energy that Lords used to have, and the bars are crazy. I'm listening to D1. He's amazing because he's putting pressure on those who are still killing everybody in their verses. You know, he's an educator out of New Orleans, and he's putting.
Oh, D1, yes, D1's he's actually a gospel rapper.
Yeah,
I gotta tell Aliya that. Yeah, I couldn't think D1 is a gospel rapper. Yeah,
I like people like that, and I have to be honest. You know, you do have rappers who utilize what's going on in their neighborhoods so that they can attract the people who are doing some of the crime in the neighborhoods. I mean, it's sort of like the theory of with Tut and Aliya and New Direction. You once you were of the problem, you can grab hold of those people by speaking their language. And I think you got people like Benny the Butcher and Griselda who have come from out of Buffalo, who speaks the language of those neighborhood people. And now they're starting to grab them, galvanize them, and now give them a word. Or if they can't give them the word, then they put them around people like D1. You know, so I just saw a conversation with how the duality is both needed, Benny the Butcher and D1. And that was a conversation with Benny the Butcher and D1. So sometimes we have to be careful not to get rid of everybody as long as their mission is the same.
Okay, well, we're going to have you back.
Yeah, and before we leave, I just want to just this historic moment, because right now we have 3 members of the D9 being represented. We have 2
So we have Alpha, AKA, and Delta.
That's right.
No here. There is no Deltas here whatsoever.
3, okay.
I see my officer.
I'm sorry. I just because you said I was going off to the red. My bad.
Maybe
stay out of those conversations.
That red dress.
Jonathan, you take the lead while I take a break. Okay,
you might get sued now.
I'm just going. You just messed me up, but.
Hey, don't be starting that trouble.
Asia, I'll see you in church, girl. I'm gonna get you.
Sunday, yes, Sunday, St. James Amy Church, D9 Sunday. Let it be known.
Competition is on. All right.
Yeah.
All
But
right then.
it's always great seeing you.
I'm here.
All right, I'll be back, Jonathan.
All right.
All right, cool. And thank you, Councilman. Thank you for coming on. Always appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
And we have to get you back on more often.
I'm here. Yes, definitely. I'm here.
All right, take care, man. All right, peace.
Take care.
And so, okay, great. And so the amazing Kenya Tyson, this lady right here, of course, my soror, I just had to point that out. This beautiful woman wears so many hats, and trying to figure out trying to get on her schedule. And so thank you so much for making the time to be with us on this frigid Friday. And then 2, you wear many hats and trying to figure out which hat to bring to this space on All Politics Are Local. And so Miss Kenya Tyson, she is the founder and executive director of the Black Massacre Project. And so Miss Tyson, Kenya, I'll probably go between these 2 things because I show nothing but respect. I'm a fan. Any guest that I bring on, I'm truly a fan. And so I'm going to go again, Kenya, Miss Tyson, whichever. But please explain to us. So you're the founder, you are the executive director of the Black Massacre Project. Let us know, what's this about? What's the inception, the genesis of it all?
Sure. So thank you so much, Asia, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you and to be in this space and in community with everyone who's watching as well. So the Black Massacre Project is actually pretty literal, right? It's an independent research center that examines and explores the historical Black massacres that took place all across the United States. In the case of our particular research center, we explore those massacres that took place after the end of slavery and up until about the 1940s. And so a lot of people, particularly in our communities, but even beyond, because of pop culture, know a lot, or at least are familiar with the Tulsa Massacre, right? We've seen depictions of that in The Watchmen and Lovecraft Country and other recent kinds of pop culture and media. But that was just one of many. Other people know about Rosewood. Those, I think, are probably the 2 that most people know about. But we explore all of them. And when I say we explore all of them, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that there were over 130 similar types of historical events across this country. And I'm not talking about individual lynchings. I'm talking about the decimation of communities and towns that were Black owned and Black.
You said 130?
That's right.
So you're not talking about 130 deaths.
130 communities across the United States. And a lot of people, and I'll tell you a little bit about the origin story in a minute, but I'll just say this. A lot of people think that these were very unique to the South, right? Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, but they took place all across the United States. Peekskill, New York, the West Coast, the East Coast, the North, New England. They happened all across the United States. And even during the Red Summer of 1919, when there was just a wave of these types of events that destroyed communities across the nation, there were about 40 of them in less than about 10 months. They even took the massacres over to Brixton and the other Black communities in London for the same reason. But the thing about it is it's all one playbook. They all, even though the origin is different amongst the different massacres, they all pretty much happen for the same reason. And so we study those, we unearth them. Some of them we know about, but even as recent as last year, we discovered another one. And one of the reasons that we don't have this knowledge, this information, is because, number one, just the way you looked at me, you were like, what? There were how many? Most of us can't conceptualize like that something like that would happen, and would happen with a regularity that it actually did. And so that's the one thing. And then the second thing is there's no historical, I won't say there's no historical records, but the historical records are scattered. And so we are the only research center in the world that we know of that explores not one, but all of them. There are research centers across the country that, explore maybe one of these. So there's like a great research center in Chicago that does this kind of work. There's, one in Tulsa. They're scattered, but there's not one that explores all of them, and there's not a lot of research on a lot of them. And so we've done a lot of primary research as well as secondary research, kind of collecting artifacts and information and interviews and lots of just data around all of these massacres.
Yeah, so I'm on the IG page, and so the Black Massacre Project. Everyone should go to IG, follow it. And I'm just looking. What you have here is the dates of the massacres that you're highlighting, and they're kind of ranging. You have Chicago 1919. You have New Orleans 1866. You have DC. I'm sorry. You have New York 1863, and so you have Charlotte as 2015, which was basically yesterday. And so you can like hit on this, like there's a playbook. And so just like go in, because these are different time frames. They're different, they're scattered throughout. It's not just like, oh, the summer of 1964. They're truly scattered. And so can you just like go into what is the similarities, the playbook that you have mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. Like it all started, of course, prior to the end of slavery. There were freedmen communities all across the United States. And there were, people who were flourishing, Black people who were flourishing all across this country. But just for the sake of being able to have a subject to study, we started at the end of slavery. And so what you see, if you look at those kinds of maps, and I do encourage people to go to the Black Massacre Project Instagram or Facebook account, not so much Twitter, but for Instagram and Facebook, we actually feature Black massacres. And so we try to post at least one Black massacre a week. And we tell you what the stories are, and we share photographs and archives that either we've collected or
That's amazing. That's truly amazing.
Yeah, and it just tells the stories. But if you look at them, there are patterns there, right? And so we know that that first post-slavery, that first real wave of massacres came during the Reconstruction period. And during the Reconstruction period, there were a lot of violent incidents like this because, first and foremost, people were coming out of the bondage of slavery and really kind of maximizing opportunity. And I think that in a lot of ways, when slavery ended, white folks said, okay, we're going to provide you with a few resources, right? There was the Freedmen's Bureau, and with the Freedmen's Bureau, it in some ways helped formerly enslaved people learn how to read. There was, a bank associated with it. There were other resources, but they were very minimal, particularly when you think about generations of being subjugated to that type of violence and slavery and cruelty. And even if you weren't enslaved, you were still not free to live in the ways that citizens in this country were living. And so that was really like the first push, because listen, they gave us an inch and we absolutely took a mile. We took 10 miles.
Amen.
That's
what we do, right?
Absolutely. That's what we do. But here's the thing. If you look at all of these massacres, that's the one thing that they all have in common. Like when you think about Tulsa, if you know anything about Tulsa, the major narrative is that the reason that happened is because there was a Black man who accidentally touched a white woman in an elevator, right? And that's the narrative that we hear about some of these other ones, that it had to do with a Black man being violent with a white woman. The reality is that the vast majority of these town communities that were destroyed were excelling, right? They were vibrant. They were literate. They, had created these very robust economies. And they were doing so at a time when our white counterparts were not really doing the same thing. And so it's like you have a place like Tulsa, for instance, where, out there in that part of the country, poor whites were eating dirt, right? And that's not to say
Mhm.
that others didn't eat dirt. I don't know, like who else was eating dirt, but I
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
there are, accounts of impoverished white people living in a dust bowl, eating dirt because there was no food and they needed something to put in their stomachs, right?
Yeah.
But at that same exact time, you had the Greenwood community. And the Greenwood community in Tulsa had 600 businesses, Black businesses, on
Wow.
35 square blocks. And so the other thing that you had in that at that time was the railroad. Of course, then there weren't cars, but there were cars, my bad. There were cars, but there was a railroad that ran through, like that ran very close to that community. So every time anybody ever went to Tulsa, they
Mhm.
had to, with the train, they had to ride through the Greenwood community. And so these were people who were, in a lot of ways, just like really surviving day to day in terms of the surrounding white communities. And that's not to suggest that there were no wealthy whites in the area or middle class whites.
Yeah.
But, at the time, because of the conditions in that part of the country, there were quite a few white people who were living impoverished. And so every time you wanted to go somewhere, you had to see that community. You had to see that brilliance. You had to see a community of people who, had their own homes. There were hospitals, there were airports, there was a runway, there was, like movie theaters. So you had all of these things there, and it built up this resentment, and so the story, the narrative is that this happened because of an interracial incident, but it was really just, a situation where people just couldn't stand to see Black people being brilliant. And that was the story of nearly every single one of these massacres, whether it was because they had economic influence. In some places, they had political influence. People don't really talk about the fact that, after during the Reconstruction period, Black people had not only the right to vote, but the right to hold political office. And so when folks came off of those plantations, they got busy. And so you had communities that had interracial communities. Like I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina. That's my hometown. And
Okay.
in my hometown, we had a multiracial government, right? There were freedmen before the slavery ended. There were freedmen who were in the government, like I think don't quote me, but like one of like the tax collector or some major municipal position was held by a Black man. There were all these situations where Black people had amassed this political power as well. And after the Reconstruction period is when they rolled that all back, right?
Yeah.
And so there were no more Black people holding office. There were no Black people, Black voting rights were decimated. But even in my hometown, where at one point Black people were more literate than white people in that town,
Wow.
it was destroyed in the same way. It was massacre,
Mhm.
insurrection of 1898, and it was actually the only successful insurrection. They tried on January 6th, but the only successful one was in 1898 in my hometown, and it was because they did not want to be governed by Black people, and they literally made a Bill of Rights, of like the white man's Bill of Rights, that laid out in black and white how they would not stand by to be governed in this way. So it was either economic independence, political influence. We have always been like at the forefront of collective bargaining and labor. Um, Another example is in Thibodaux, Louisiana, um, which is probably like an hour outside of New Orleans. It's a great, if you ever go to New Orleans, it's a great place to visit because they actually have uh, actual authentic slave cabins
Oh,
on
wow.
the plantation, and you can actually go in, and they haven't even necessarily been like preserved, but when I tell you, it's like maybe 50, 60 of them, right? And so you really kind of get a feel
Oh, wow.
for what it was to be enslaved on a sugar cane plantation. But after the end of slavery, the sharecroppers who remained in that area moved into those same houses or those same structures. And once slavery ended, the Black people in those communities organized themselves from a labor perspective, and they decided that number one, they were not going to be paid with like IOUs for the company store or anything like that. They wanted cash.
That's right. I know that's right.
And they wanted to, in many ways, kind of like unionize and organize themselves. And, listen, a Black man was the one who created the process that moved sugar from the actual cane into granulated sugar. And it happened in that community. So they were like, okay, we know how to do this, and we need to be paid for our work, and we need to have some agency over that. And they organized all of the Black people in that community for that purpose, over $1 a barrel. That was the going rate that they wanted. And the response to that was to literally, in that same slave community that I talked about, the white men in that community went door to door, knocked on the doors of that community, and called the men and boys out onto the porch and blew their brains out.
Stop.
So it's like, it's kind of the same thing every time. When there's progress, this is the way these groups historically have pushed back progress.
Yeah. And you know what? I wonder. So hearing you and hearing how you're explaining the massacres and the patterns of it, like the modern day version of that, and wondering if we're going through a modern day version of that. And so during those time periods, which spread significantly, it was legalized. Like a white man can have Black men and Black boys come out on their front porches and blow their heads out. And probably none of those individuals that did that, committed those crimes, those terrorists, were ever held accountable for that under the law. And so you can't really get away with that right now. And if you can, it's a whole process, right? It's not as simple as it was. I know, but it's not as simple as it was then, right?
It was like Trayvon and right. Not as simple, but
right. And so we had, let's just call them like the Obama years. And I remember, and I read the book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I hope I pronounced this man's name right. But he writes a book about the 8 years that we are in power. And so he correlates the 8 years under Reconstruction with the 8 years under Obama, and how different progress has been able to make. And Ta-Nehisi, he then elaborates how there's always there's consequences to success. Or there's consequences to elevation of Black struggle in our country. And so after you had 8 years of Reconstruction, then you had basically almost another century under Jim Crow laws. And so after 8 years of Obama, and it's like, we're going through it right now. Are we still within those 8 years? No, we're not. But we're out 8 years from Obama, but we're still having the consequences of that success, the success of having the highest person in the land being a Black man, and different. And then you have the affirmative action, you have DEI. And so you have these successes within the Black and brown communities. And then it's like jealousy, just to put it like plain and simple. We're jealous that these are happening. and it's not happening for us, or we don't think it's happening to us. We're just seeing it happen to other folks. And so we have this backlash.
Yeah.
And so that pattern that you referenced as for the Black Massacre, the modern day version of that pattern. It's interesting.
Some would say we're reliving it. And I think that analogy is spot on, right? So we had a period of not just because of Obama, or not necessarily during the Obama administration, but think about the number of Black people in this country who are now formally educated and have been able to leverage federal financial aid to make that happen for themselves, right? There's that. Think about the number of people, Black people, who have, moved into various careers and professions that were not necessarily occupied by Black people. Black people can live where they want to practically at this point. They have access to things that we may not have necessarily had access to before. And even though, there are some things like home ownership that are stagnant, that have been stagnant for a while, Black people absolutely are faring, had been faring well, and had seen some measure of success that put them in similar, like at a similar level as whites. But here's the thing about it. And I will say this, Asia, like there's one thing about the lower class, underclass, working class white person who's resentful of Black success. But history tells us that it doesn't matter how much money, someone has, there's still the possibility of a wealthy white person being resentful of, Black people. So it's like, it's not just about poverty. And then if you look, at the 1960s, particularly at the work that people did during that time to kind of say to all poor people that, this is less about race and more about class. And, while you're worrying about what Black folks are doing, there are these systems that are taking us all down. Right. And so, so it's not just about socioeconomics. There seems to be a general resentment around the success. And this is the backlash, or the blacklash, as they like to say. That's, we're seeing it started with legislation. So even if you look at the Reconstruction period, that was a series of laws and policies that opened up opportunities for Black people after they had been emancipated. But after we started, we took that little bit and we were like, okay, great, we can do all these things. They were like, whoa, wait a minute. And then started repealing all those laws and repealing all those policies. So rolling everything back, right? Just like we're rolling things back now.
Exactly. Repeat, girl, go ahead. Talk that.
So we repeal these laws, and the next step after you roll all the legislation back is the violent, is that violence that comes after it, right? Because first and foremost, if you don't roll back the legislation and the policies that provide equal protection to Black people, then when you start the violence, they have, there are more significant consequences. And so we're seeing this now as all of this legislation gets rolled back. And now what will it look like 2 years from now, if it takes that long for there to be these kind of violent outbursts that are taking place? That's the question.
And that are already taking place, actually, right? Like you have in some cases, you have massacres of Asians taking place that have already taken place in Atlanta. You have massacres of Black people that took place in the church. You have massacres of Black people that took place in a grocery market. And it's all been the same thing that's been building, right? Like, and Yes.
It's you being here. I wish I was like brilliant enough to be like, oh, this is timely. It just really just worked itself out. You coming this evening and having this discussion. And so when people are saying we are living in dangerous times, this is legitimate. We are truly living in dangerous times because as history has shown us, Miss Kenya Tyson, I'm so respectful, I try, has shown us history repeats itself. And it doesn't always necessarily look the same. And I'm assuming like we dove more into each massacre that you and your team have uncovered. It's probably not exactly the same to the T, but there are patterns like you mentioned. And so we're in the midst of this cycle where that pattern it's revealing itself. And going back to the previous segments that we have, the overall messaging is just voting is important. Like being a part of the political process is important, and local government is going to be that much more important in securing our safety for the next X amount of time. And so making sure that we are voting for people that are truly in our best interest. And when I say best interest, we're not even talking about trying to gain higher level of attainment. We're truly talking about safety. Right. We're talking about livelihood. We are talking about making sure that our children can walk down the street and feel secure that their harm won't be done to them just because. And so that's just being mindful. Not just mindful, we have to be actionary. Like we have to do what we need to do to ensure that we are protected in our own best interest. And we need other people around, because I do think that messaging gets lost. Like this is a Black issue. No, it is not a Black issue. It is our issue. They're coming for everyone. And if you allow it, they're going to come for you too.
Yes.
And so there's no exception to this. We're all in it together.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree with that.
And so it's 7:32. I'm going to be mindful of your time because Jonathan, if you understood how long I've been knocking down on this lady's door, like, okay, so what we doing? It's just,
that's excellent.
I like it.
And so thank you. I am honored. Like truly, I am honored to be able to get your time on a Friday night at that. And so thank you so much. But being true, before we let you go, being true to all politics are local, Miss Kenya Tyson. Sorry. We asked all of our guests this question. Who is your favorite rap artist, rap group, and or rap song?
Lord, you could have prepped me for this. All this chitty chatting we do back and forth, and you didn't mention this.
I know. Well, that it's supposed to be a surprise. We're supposed to go through this economy right now. If you just gave an answer, then it wouldn't be fun.
Okay, the question was, who's my favorite rapper? Who's my favorite?
So it could be one. You can answer just one. You might have a favorite rapper. You might have a favorite rap group. You might have a favorite rap song. And so,
okay,
would you like to know?
All right. So I'm not a person who does very well with picking any one thing. Can't ask me my favorite color. I won't know that either. But I will say, in terms of my favorite rappers, probably Nas, I think, is probably my favorite. Period. That timeless. It never gets old.
Period. You get credibility here. You get credibility. When people answer that question, I'm just like, how? But Nas, truly, I agree. You have a favorite song of his? Mind sharing, or no pressure?
Oh, you know what? If I tell you what it is, it would date me too much. I ain't gonna tell you.
Black don't crack, girl. Black don't crack. You probably just
got
what? It's not either?
Nah.
Okay.
You gotta go way back. So I'm not gonna say what it is, but I'm just gonna say Nas, and I enjoy much of his discography. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that.
And so thank you again, my soror, Miss Kenya Tyson, for coming on and speaking to us about the Black Massacre, and helping us give language to history and how history repeats itself and how we're in that pattern of history repeating itself. And so thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Absolutely. And we want to definitely have you back on because there's so much that you didn't go through. And we could have had you on for like 2 hours.
Precisely.
You mentioned a place in Peekskill, New York. That's where we go to debate often, right? And I had no idea where places, I'm a teacher, I'm a debate coach, places where we take kids, where we've stayed in hotels, was a site of a massacre of so a Black community, right? So
absolutely.
And you can also visit his school too.
Send me a message because I absolutely love sharing the information with young people. They need to know. And then I would also just say, if you are interested in learning more about the massacres, again, you can check out our social media, Black Massacre Project, both on Instagram and Facebook, Massacre Project on Twitter. And we also have a website that shares information about events and other research projects that we're doing. And that is the Black Massacre. It's not the, take out the "the," it's blackmassacreproject.org.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Very much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we have now we are all politics are local. One of the things that we regularly do is we interview people who are running for local office because we think that it is important that all voices are heard, that we believe in civic discourse. And we want to have conversations that are so important in terms of getting people involved. We had so many different segments all tonight that are all leading to the importance of voting local, the importance of understanding politics, the importance of understanding all of that, right? And we are honored to have today a person who is a fixture in Newark in many ways. And that is Ryan Talmadge. Ryan Talmadge, you are running for the Central Ward, for the open seat in the Central Ward. There's going to be a special election. There's going to be a special election soon. I am uncertain, as it's been resolved, if it's going to be in April with the school board election or in June with the other elections. Can you talk to me first about just the when the election is? Has that been resolved?
Yeah, so first off, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate being on this channel. Thank you for your kind words, being a fixture. And I don't know if I deserve that just yet, but I really do appreciate that.
You're a Newark native. You're born and raised here.
Absolutely.
You worked in organizations that you're going to tell us about. So no, you deserve that.
Well, appreciate it, brother. As far as the resolution to the city wanting to move the election up from November to April, I believe the judge was it Tuesday or Wednesday. Said that it cannot be in April. I believe the date will be November. I guess it could be June, but I believe the election is going to be in November of this year.
Okay. So talk to me. You are running for Central Ward. You are running for the open seat in the Central Ward. Tell us something about your background so that the listeners know something about you, and then we can go from there.
Sure. And feel free to cut me off anytime. I know, like my sister says, that I ramble all the time, so hopefully I don't do that here today. But it really starts back in 2023, around September, where the city of Newark shut off the water in my parents' building, a building of over 200 some odd units. Very frustrating time, as you can imagine. No water for almost 24 hours, and there was no notice beforehand. Come to find out, the reason for the water being shut off was that the LLC that owned the building didn't pay the city $400,000 to $500,000 for their water bill. So I went over there, I helped them form a tenants association. We went down at the next public hearing council meeting, and I spoke on their behalf. And what I found there were dozens of other tenants from across the city and in the Central Ward who had a lot of other issues with their landlords as well. And whereas for us, it was our first time going there, for them, it was clearly their third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. And what I saw was from our elected officials, there was no movement to instill a policy to make sure it didn't happen again or to correct any kind of wrong. And so we weren't satisfied with that. I'm somebody, like you said, I'm born and raised in Newark, 15 years old, as lifeguard at Hayes Park West and JFK Pools. I've have a degree from Rutgers University, Newark in political science. I was also a security officer there and a guest lecturer at the Honors College, the HLLC, half of which those students come from the city of Newark. And for the last 4 years, ever since COVID, I've been a grant manager who secured over $70 million in grant funding from municipalities and counties throughout the state. And I also serve voluntarily as the chairman of the Newark Land Bank Community Advisory Board. So I think I have the experience that's directly applicable to being an effective council person and someone who can really discuss policy. I don't want to go too long, but I can rattle off a few policies, or we can just have a discussion either way.
Okay, well, we could talk a little more about your background. Now, you said you graduated from, and this is just random, the Newark's HLLC program. Was that the one that was?
No. So at the time I wasn't a good enough student to be in the HLLC program. I graduated from Rutgers University with a degree in political science in 2013. But since then, I worked at the college as a security officer and then security lieutenant, and ran into the HLLC when it was being formed. Dean Eatman and some of the other deans from the college. We spoke a little bit, and he asked me to come, give a guest lecture on public policy generally, getting folks engaged in local politics, how to do that, who your council people are, who your mayors are, and getting more active in a more local setting instead of always a national kind of context. And that's what I did for a few times.
Okay, that's great. It's a wonderful program. If our listeners don't know, Rutgers Newark has a wonderful program, higher living and learning community that is in Newark, where a lot of kids around the state go for free, and they're housed there, right? So they have a special dorm. They are housed there, and at least in the last few years, they very much focused on having a lot of Newark students go there. One of my a few of my students were recruited for the early years of the program, and many kids who were on my debate team ended up going through that program because it's so good. It is free. They offer you money to go there. So if anybody listening, Rutgers Newark has this incredible program, HLLC, that they should become more of a part of.
And also, just real quick, the HLC also, at least they had when I was guest lecturing there, the evaluation process for the incoming freshmen is so unique and different from everything at that time that I experienced. When I came on to be an evaluator, I was like, oh, wow. And it's not so much difficult, but it is very thought provoking and gets you to kind of step outside the box of just purely academic, but also honoring other things to be honored in people's background, which I thought was a really cool idea when I was there.
Okay, and now you're also a part of the, like I looked at some things, you are a trust for the Newark Trust for Education, Newark Education Trust.
So no, I was never part of that organization. I think I might have been on there I might have been a part of a forum for them that they had hosted. Okay. I was a part of Leadership Newark, which is a 2-year public policy program in the city of Newark. So I was in the 2019 cohort for that.
Okay, forgive me. I was doing very quick research before this and did a quick Google search of your name. So I must have seen the wrong thing. So I should do better research on that. So give us more about your background.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, right now I live around Mulberry Commons in that kind of area. And like I said, just day to day as a grant manager, just reading and working with communities across the state, from counties as big as 500,000 plus people to municipalities as small as under 9,000. Get a really good sense of how communities operate, how they function. Some have council people that don't get paid at all, right? But there's always a level of politics to that. But it's really rewarding to be able to work with getting folks funding for pedestrian safety initiatives and food pantries and workforce development programs. Recreation programs, of course, are a big one too, and a lot of street grants are available as well, but those aren't as rewarding. Even though those are the bigger numbers, those aren't as rewarding as like a $20,000 grant you can give to somebody starting up a food pantry or like a shelter or something like that.
Okay, and so why do you want to be council? Why do you want to be a council person for the Central Ward?
Yeah, I think that housing affordability is undoubtedly the biggest issue that the city of Newark, well, the Central Ward in the city of Newark faces. Arguably the biggest issue that the globe probably faces, right? But we can only control what we what we have a purview of. So for me, just very simply, we just need a few policies to make it so that we don't have landlords or LLCs that are doing the wrong thing. I have no problem of landlords by design. I just don't want them to turn into slumlords, and I want there to be some sort of accountability with our legislative branch, our lawmakers, elected officials, and for the folks that own homes that have actual people living in them, right? They need to be held accountable. So for me, to have that kind of accountability, one, I would change the AMI that we use from the local 37.
What is an AMI?
Sure. Oh, area median income. So that's the area median income for Newark, and Newark uses it's around 37,000, I think now, household income, and they usually do that to determine whether or not someone is eligible for affordable housing. So 80% of the AMI, 120%, 50%, there's different tiers for different housing. Sorry.
Keep going. That's fine.
Sure.
I'm going to change this.
Sure. So there's different tiers for those different housing projects. And what I'm suggesting is that we change it to the New Jersey Region 2 AMI, which has other counties roped into it, so that the AMI changes from the $37,000 per household to the $110,000 per household. This will show us a bigger picture of folks that need help and that should be eligible for affordable housing. I also have a proposal for 800-unit social housing pilot program, social housing different from affordable housing, in the way that it's structured, so that folks, no matter what your income is, you only pay up to 30% of your total income on your rent for that. Outside of that, you look at some of the newer laws that have been, or newer ordinances that have been passed, and IZOs and things of that nature. I would really just start to attach the penalties and fees when your buildings aren't up to code, and you're not registered correctly. Yeah, I see someone said fair share housing. That's a good policy as well. But for the fees and penalties that we have on the books for LLCs and landlords, we really should look to tie that into the number of units that they own, to make it more prohibitive for when they do mess up, that they actually feel that fine, and it's not just like a speeding ticket that they feel they can just keep on pushing on, forever. And there's a lot of buildings that need a lot of help, and there's a lot of LLCs that play games and they know what they're doing. And we as a city need to be smarter about how we serve our residents and kind of empower tenants to have a tenants power movement in the city, which I feel is long overdue. Probably statewide is long overdue for us to have a tenants power movement. I would also have a clean hands doctrine, meaning that any landlord or LLC whose properties aren't up to code will not be allowed to evict a tenant. That's something that the city can do. And it's something worth fighting for, again, to just have that more of that tenant power as well. And going back to the community building piece of it, is really through grants. We're lucky enough to live in a state that has a very robust grant system. Newark does get a lot of grants, and you see some of that work done. Streets in New Jersey are the biggest one, I think, by far. We can do a lot of smaller purposeful projects in our different neighborhoods, and again, not too big, $200,000 or less, and do curb cutouts to make our streets more walkable. Kind of reclaim a lot of that gray space that we have, particularly in the Central Ward, right? The Central Business District, and then going into the Eastwood. There's a lot of traffic that we have to have, and traffic isn't necessarily a bad thing. It means that people are coming through your area. We can use that, but if we build spaces to fit the people that live there, instead of us as people trying to fit into our spaces, we'd be better off doing that.
So when you're looking at the Central Ward, you mentioned a lot about housing, and you mentioned a lot about grants that could actually help housing. You talked about slumlords and enforcement. What would you do, as a Central Ward council person? What does a council person do that affects enforcement?
Sure. So one, it's really just being aware of what's going on. Like I said, I'm not going to be a council person who can hear a tenant complain time and time again, right? Month after month, year after year, and just say at the time, because there's a good turnout, to say like, oh yeah, we really care about this, or yeah, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and then next month it's another issue, maybe with another building or with the same building. I mean, that's just something that's not something that we shouldn't do. I understand that for code enforcement, we probably need to hire more code enforcement officers. Again, once I'm in there, I'll get a better picture of what's actually wrong, but I suspect that might be one of the issues. But again, on the books, I think at the very least, because it's simply as a council person, you're a legislator, right? You write ordinances and you pass ordinances and you pass a city budget. The least you can do is have, strong laws on the books to make sure that we don't have landlords in the state. When we do catch you, where it might take a while for us to get to the bottom of it, when we do, that fine will be significant. Oh, sorry, I think you're muted.
So what you're talking about is looking at the laws in the books and making sure those laws are enforced by simply working with code enforcement itself.
In raising those right now, instead of having a flat rate for a LLC that might own one property and maybe the four units in that property, I'm talking, what about the LLCs that have like two buildings, right? The LLC that owns my parents' building owns at least one more building, probably others, but at least one more building. That's a combined 400 plus units. So they shouldn't have to pay the same fee as a landlord or LLC that has significantly less number of units. So I want to tie it into that so that when those because the big guys can, or the big LLCs and landlords, they can eat that cost. That cost can be a part of doing business, right? Like, oh yeah, we haven't fixed the elevators forever. Oh yeah, you have whatever infestation. Oh yeah, we haven't, repainted, or there's water leaking or whatever. But we don't have to do that right away because yes, we get fines, but the fines equal up to, like I said, the reason they shut off the water and why a city would shut off the water because an LLC didn't pay them is beyond me. That's another issue of why we need better leadership. But the idea that they owe 400,000,
like for the city shuts off the water of apartment buildings where the LLC doesn't pay.
So that happened in the city of Newark. I don't know how often that happens. I know that it happened from my parents' building, and it was threatened to be happen to another building that the LLC that owns that building also owns. But that did happen in September 2023. The city decided to shut off the water in almost 24 hours without any notice. And the reasoning for that was that the LLC owed them $400,000 to $500,000 over a span of 2 years or something like that, or 1.5 years or 2 years or something. So again, I think that's a piece, although I see that as somewhat malicious, I think ultimately the way to resolve that is really simple, right? To just have policies in place and to have elected officials that pay a little bit more attention to the communities that they serve.
What are some of the other issues that you would deal with, especially within and what do you see as some of the problems? Like you talked about housing as being a particular issue and problem within the Central Ward. What are the other problems that you see in the Central Ward, and what are some of the solutions that you would have for that?
Yeah, so the other problems, I kind of mentioned it before, but it's just gray space. And we claim, I say gray space are streets, gray spaces are parking lots, right? Gray spaces are places that can't be activated and they're only for cars. Right?
And when you said what kind of spaces?
Oh, sorry, gray spaces, gray?
Gray, like the color gray?
Like the color gray, like
gray
asphalt. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so talk to me. What are gray spaces and...
Sure, yeah. So gray spaces, and that's the term I picked up from a lot of the reading I've been doing. So sorry but gray space, like I said, they're the roadways, they're the parking spaces, they're the parking lots that dominate really a lot of New Jersey and New York. But for the Central Ward particularly, because we have the central business district, we have downtown. That's almost all gray space. And if you look at a map and take out, all of the housing, all the businesses, all of the there's not that much spaces for people to exist, right? And to exist and not have to pay anything just to exist. So we have, like I said, I live by Mulberry Commons. That's cool. We have other parks, throughout the Central Ward, Nat Turner, right? You have pools and stuff like that. But I'm talking about really building spaces that are ADA compliant. And being ADA compliant is something that's a law for the state of New Jersey. And I've spoken to a couple advocacy groups about that. But we can really do that, like I said, with simple, small grants to make those curb cutouts so that pedestrians feel like they can walk freely throughout the city. That the city is for them and it's not for people that are driving in and out, throughout the day. It will cut down on pedestrians getting hit. And then you create other spaces and you start planting trees to make, not only for beautification, but just that is a big part of it, but also just to make an environment safer for people, more inviting, and to have more people actually use the Central Ward in all of it, in every area, not only in the downtown, Muhammad Ali Ave, all the places, I said Nat Turner Park, around JFK Pool, all of those spots need a lot of love and attention. And I think once you see that, then you'll see spaces really activated, not just that they have a new building that's going up that maybe we can't afford, but just spaces that are obviously built for the people who live there, and start building spaces and places where folks can age in place. And again, I take this a lot from my just background of being a really successful grant manager, that I know that there's grant funding out there to do that. I propose smaller projects rather than the large scale projects, right? Just for capacity's sake, and also to have that feedback loop so you know what works and what doesn't. But I think if we're smart about it, we can really start, again, just designing a city for the residents, right?
I was going to say that's excellent, right? Like in talking about the different ways in which you are looking at repurposing like different spaces. I've never heard of the word gray space before, right? So when you were talking about that, you're literally saying taking the spaces that we have, using grants to make them more livable.
Absolutely, and really just turning. I forget what the term is that folks use, but just car centric, right? Right now, our cities are very car centric. You need a car to get around, and that might be less true in New York, might be less true, but you go to other spaces, and it's like you need a car, right, to get around. These spaces are designed with cars in mind, and that's not a bad thing. But we do need to be able to grow and change that when our environment changes, particularly when it's not a healthy situation to be in. And we can do it. And I said the spaces should be for the people who live there.
Well, the elections are not going to be for a while. It's not going to be till November. But let us know right now, like if you were, because we're getting ready to end off our show. So I'm going to end off this segment. So
Okay.
first, and ending out, and you can end out any way you want. But we're a hip hop show. We ask the same question. Who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual, group, or who's inspiring you right now? So just let us know.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I think the last time, it was years and years ago. The last time I was on here, I said the same person is not going to change. That's DMX. DMX, someone I can listen to when I'm working out. Seeing that someone I can listen to when I'm trying to just relax. I also want to give a quick shout out to an older group that some folks may not know. There's a lot of young kids out today, but Public Enemy, man. We get an NWA movie. I love NWA. We need a Public Enemy movie as well, man. They were dope. 911 is a joke in your town, harder than you think. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the vibe that I'm on. But if people want to just reach me as far as the campaign is concerned, they can reach me on Facebook. Many of them obviously see me downtown. You just grab me up. We can chat about anything. Like I said, I want to make my campaign, differentiate my campaign from others, in that it's very policy driven. And I'm happy to talk about policy and really changing the community. It's not just that I live here. It's not just that you see me. It's that when I get into that seat, I can do a tangible good to improve the lives of my neighbors in my community.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. We very much appreciate you, man. And then come back. Again, we believe in civil civic discourse. We're going to be having all the candidates on. We see this is going to be a good race, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
All right. You too. And we have on Dr. Kelly Harris. Dr. Kelly Harris, give us an introduction. What have you been up to? What are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm trying to survive just like everybody else, trying to see what's going on, how we need to organize around this assault on everything Black. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I can hear you. So,
okay.
Tell us what you think briefly about what's been going on for the last few days.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? Right now, so University of Penn, like other universities, they're scrubbing their websites of DEI stuff. So that's happening on the campus right now. And I know there's going to be some pushback from people around it, and people are scrambling to have meetings to see what we can do. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of how the attack is going to hit Africana studies in higher education, but it's coming because we see it happening K through 12. So we still don't know what it's going to look like and what that means for us in terms of Africana studies. So we're really trying to figure out what we need to do. And this is when I say we. I can't speak for all Africana studies programs, but I imagine that's what's happening. And I know that Abdullah Kalamat has put the call out for Africana studies programs to meet and discuss and strategize in terms of what we can do to survive and thrive and to beat back this madness.
I remember we talked like a few years ago, right? And we talked about what happens to Africana studies, what happens to Black studies, what happens to like so much when people were talking about critical race theory and the pressures that were going on like 10 years ago. What is it that is there a thought that all these programs can just be shut down? Are universities just like, we are endangering of not getting federal funds? What is some of the conversation about?
Well, I think so. I think that's where the conversation probably is in terms of the federal funds, cutting universities off from federal funds. Because from what I understand, the administration is trying to ban any ethnic kind of studies programs. In addition, of course, to DEI. I think they're trying to lump all that stuff together. And so I think universities are going to be pressured to remove any funding or to shut down any kind of programs. There's a story about a protest that happened in Wayne State. I haven't read it yet. Someone sent it to me earlier, but I've been traveling today, so I haven't really seen it yet. I know students protested there about their university scrubbing, everything DEI from all their stuff. My wife was telling me that they're I think a cultural center got shut down.
And you're
I
saying
think,
this is at Wayne State?
yeah, Wayne State. Yeah, is that correct? Because I haven't. I'm a little bit behind on that information, but
Yeah, I'm just trying to check that out now.
yeah. So, and I know like a cultural center got shut down. Or at least I was told that that's what happened. So these kind of things, because at a lot of institutions, a lot of minority serving institutions, but also a lot of predominantly white institutions, you see some with black cultural centers, which now the question is, are they going to be able to survive? You have resource centers, African American resource centers. We have one at Penn. Is it going to be able to survive? A lot of places have black graduations, and they're saying those kind of things are racist, reverse racism. So they're going to try to shut those kind of things down. So, and I think what the challenge is, there probably are a lot of universities. I shouldn't say probably. There are a lot of universities who have these things because of the pressure and the protest people, demanded it. A lot of universities aren't really committed to it, really. So this is kind of, in my estimation, what the Trump administration is doing is giving these universities cover to get rid of some initiatives that they really don't have the stomach for anyway, that they're not really behind anyway.
Because it seems to me in some of these places, in some of these cases, that they're like, oh, I mean, they're just running right ahead. They're like, oh, no, we can't have this anymore.
Right, exactly.
You're like, what? Like,
exactly.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, you can't have any of the stuff that people have actually fought for over time, and it gives them an excuse to run it down.
Exactly. So that's where we have to organize and figure out what we can do to stop it. And it has to work its way through the courts in terms of the legality of it all. But it's really, I think for me, it's just really disappointing. Not surprising, because I do remember our last conversation. You were very adamant about these things happening. And I'm like, no, man, this is going to be all right. And you were right. You were right. I was wrong. You know what I mean? So what surprises me is how quickly people cave.
Right.
That's what's the surprising thing. And I understand. I understood the Republicans caving because that's what they do. But I really don't see the opposition in terms of the Democratic Party, independents, whoever. I really don't see the opposition having a strong opposition right now.
Well, there are a couple of things, right? Like, I think that people go the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I knew is that there are a lot of white people who, like 6 in 10 voted for Trump outright. And then there were it was around 6 in 10, right? Of white people all over the United States who voted for Trump. And they voted for someone who was overtly racist, who overtly made Nazi kind of white supremacists, not even dog whistles, like overt things, right? And if you're voting for someone who's leading that in, and they're setting a tone, right? Because I think one of us says you can't blame Trump for everything. And you're right, because there are a whole lot of people who supported Trump in that way. Like he's a figurehead who's like the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025. You have a lot of right-wing people who galvanized around him when everyone else kind of abandoned him, right? So the mainstream Republicans abandoned him. The people who are really far right are the people who galvanized around him, and they had particular, political needs and wants. And those are the ones that were loudest. And he appealed to them. He got people to vote who hadn't voted in these other elections, right? Like, so a lot of the people on the real far right normally weren't voting because the Republican politicians didn't really represent what they wanted. He spoke to them in ways that I knew that hadn't been spoken to for a while, which is why there was an influx of white people coming out to vote in ways they hadn't. Like in Georgia, Harris literally got more votes than Biden did the last time, right? Like she literally got more. She got more votes than any Democrat had ever got in the state of Georgia. She got more votes than Kemp had gotten previously. She got more votes than like Brian Kemp, the governor, right, who was there,
Right.
who won twice. She got more votes than him, right? So and Trump just happened to get more votes than anybody else who had previously run, because so many more people came out to vote who hadn't previously voted. So it represents a lot of a lot of a sentiment that you see cascading down, right? So there are a lot of Black people who support Trump and still support Trump, and they're still like, "Hey, that's all lies," right? Like, and we're like, nothing we could do if you just don't see what's in front of you. Like right now, I'm talking to a professor of Africana Studies at UPenn who's talking about like how other professors of Africana Studies across the nation are about to get shut down or feel they have to push to not get shut down, because there's so many things that overtly are happening that are race-based, because that's part of Trump's base.
Well, and I think and something you just said in your comment, one of the things that we have to remember, there's a long arc to this. The success that Trump is having now, it really is a result of really like almost, we're talking about 100 years of Malcolm X birthday coming up. But it's almost 100 years of this conservative backlash. What will be against Roosevelt and the New Deal, what will be against the welfare state, this 100-year backlash where businessmen wanted to take control over the country. And this is their greatest success right now in this particular moment. So they've been against all the things that Africana Studies has stood for, and came up in higher education in the 1960s. All the things that the Civil Rights Movement stood for, the Black Power Movement stood for, the liberation struggles all across the world, all those things that those stood for, people have been wanting to get rid of and erase. And this is I shouldn't even say people, particularly wealthy people, particularly businessmen, and their interests. This is why these think tanks have become were so important in the development of the conservative movement. This is their greatest success in this moment that we're in now. And the thing that we have to take away from it's been almost 100 years of them planning and organizing for this particular moment. And we haven't planned and organized in the same way. And I think we kind of, we didn't necessarily fall asleep at the wheel, but we're in a period of kind of quiescence. And we're missing a national voice. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said, I wish Jesse Jackson was in his prime to give voice for stuff. And I know people got problems with Jesse, but Jesse served a particular function, an important function that we're missing right now, because there really is no national pushback that we need right now against this administration.
And it's interesting, right? Because you talk about 100 years. By the way, I want to welcome Hakim Green to the conversation. Hakim Green is Newark's ambassador to hip hop. We always talk about Madism whenever he comes on. We are going, because Madism, and he's going to tell us about this, is always a combination of art, business, and politics, right? It is philosophy, right? So he's not just a hip hop artist who is highly successful, and Newark's ambassador to hip hop is also a philosopher type artist as well. So we're gonna shift the conversation in a few minutes, but I do want to get to a point that you raised, because you said you were like it's been 100 years. So a lot of people are thinking about the backlash that's going on right now as being a backlash against the civil rights movement, right? And you're like, no, this isn't just a backlash against the civil rights movement. It is an economic backlash against highly progressive taxes. Again,
no question.
Restraints on business. Can you break that down and explain it?
Yeah, and so that's actually the last time I think I was on here. We talked about, if I'm not mistaken, Smedley Butler, and how the businessmen were recruiting him. He was a vet. He was a World War I hero.
Who are you talking about?
Smedley Butler. businessmen recruited him in the 1930s to have a coup against President Roosevelt because they did not like what he was doing with the New Deal and his taxation problem. You got to remember, so back during the New Deal, the taxation, the top marginal tax rate was up about over 60-something%. It got up to as high as over 90% during World War II era, the 1940s. It went back down to 70-something% during the Kennedy and Johnson eras, and even during Nixon time. Then when Reagan got in, that's when it got down to about 28%. Then it came back up to where it's at now, about 37%. And of course, Trump is trying to take that down. But we have to think about, what does that mean? And what does that? So when we talk about, and this is what's funny, because when people talk about Make America Great Again, generally they're pointing to the 1940s and 1950s. People don't realize or forget or overlook the impact that taxation had in terms of social programs and building the welfare state in this country after the New Deal. So the modern welfare state, of course, was born during the New Deal, and that's what they've been trying to dismantle. And of course, civil rights movement comes along, Black Power movement comes along, Black Africana Studies, Black Studies, Africana Studies comes along, Latino Studies comes along, Women's Studies comes along, Student Protest Movement comes along, and they want to dismantle all that too. But their organizing had already started in the 1930s as a response to what Roosevelt was doing, and this modern welfare state being created.
Wow. Hakim, do you want to jump in? I know you had something to say.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening, taking it all in. I know he says the 30s and the 40s, and I'm big on the through line, the historical through line, right? So when I get to the McCarthy era, and what's the boy's name? The attorney who was his general counsel and really the brainchild behind the McCarthy strategy of blame, lie, accuse. Roy Cohn. There you go, Roy Cohn. And he's apparently was he was Trump's guy. In fact, Trump in his first term, he was going through all the impeachment, said he wished he had an attorney like Roy Cohn. But he was introduced, I want to say, to Roy Cohn through Richard Nixon. And Richard Nixon being, I guess, the direct pushback from to the civil rights movement. That right-wing swing, he was just so corrupt and that, and actually just, he was Trump 1.0. This is Trump 3.0 right now.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just that, to follow up what you're saying about the pushback is not just a pushback in terms of civil rights, but also, the New Deal policies of FDR, which was really specifically targeting poor white people. We talk about the creation of the middle class, which happened in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. That's why the 50s are considered the happy days, is because of the investment that was made in America through these New Deal policies. But, Black people, African Americans were left out of that. And that's when we get to the civil rights era, where it's like, okay, well, we need to be included. We're being taxed as well. We need to be a part of the fabric of the benefit. And conservative white America did not want to see that. I mean, they didn't really want to see it when it was first instituted by FDR. The rich, what do you call it? The Carnegies, the Fords.
That's right.
Yeah, all these jokers, they didn't want to share the wealth. They want these capitalists to not even with poor working class white people. They did not want to share the wealth. But through these New Deal policies, the benefit to the country, was expressed, and the happy days were created, the middle class. And so yeah. So I'm right with you.
Yeah, and I need to say this for my historian friends, where they point out my error, and I want to make clear. Yes, there was a backlash before that to Reconstruction. We know that.
Absolutely,
there was a backlash, and we also know that there was a desire to undermine the UNIA, the Garvey movement, the Harlem Renaissance, Chicago Black Renaissance. So that all that stuff is going on at the same time. There's just an additional intensity or focus when it comes to when Roosevelt comes in. So they're operating on multiple tracks. So I want to be clear that they've always tried to undermine our movements. That's always clear. But the particular conservative organizing in terms of think tanks and things, that stuff really begins developing and gaining steam in the 1930s as a result of Roosevelt and the modern welfare state being created.
Interesting, right? Because you're talking about think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and others who really just end up arming politicians with the theoretical reasons why they should do what they do.
Yeah, that's right.
And so before we shift into the cultural part of the conversation, where's this going to go, man? Because I always like Dr. Harris was so optimistic before, and I understand. I don't know whether I'm not fully pessimistic, but I'm very leery. Where are you? In our last segment, we were talking to someone who is does the Black she's the executive director of the Black Massacre Project, and she studies Black massacres throughout U.S. history, over 130, where there were whole communities that were wiped out. And she's like, there are these whole communities that are wiped out because there's a perception that Black people are doing well in those communities, therefore they are attacked and murdered. And she says that based on the Obama backlash, which is really the Black middle class backlash, that we're set up to have another era of massive violence, lynchings, etc. What do you have to say about that?
Me or Hakim?
Well, first you,
Okay.
and then we're gonna segue into the conversation.
Okay.
With Hakim.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I read a piece yesterday in the New York Times where Tom Friedman was being interviewed, and Thomas Friedman. I have some issues with him, but he said something very interesting about this moment that we're in. He said he doesn't believe in politics anymore because of how craven these politicians are, just caving into everything. But he said he does believe in gravity. And what he meant by that is that everything Trump is doing, at some point, the bottom is going to fall out because these things are crazy, and it's going to have a negative impact on the society at large. It's going to backfire. So what that looks like, I don't know. So my optimism is, and it's not even rooting for things to fail. It's not even that kind of thing, but it's just physics. It's going to fail. We know what he's doing is going to have a negative impact. It is having a negative impact. You can't put so many people out of work and not have a blowback at some point. And people are waking up. People are organized. He has people already, voters, who saying that they will not vote for him or should not have voted for him and felt they were duped. They're already saying that, and we're not even out of February yet. So I think that we have to look for organizing and make sure the midterms are victorious for anti-Trump forces. I think that's our next big step because if you can gain control over part of at least one of the houses in Congress, then you have a chance to stop his agenda.
And even some of the special elections that are coming up in the next
exactly. So I agree with Friedman on that. I believe in gravity, and I think that it's going to fall out.
All right, and Hakim, I'm going to segue you right into this next segment, where we talk about Maddism, and because I think everything you do is in some way connected to it, right? Like it's connected to your philosophy, it's connected to the way you look at the world. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that you are so deep on it, man. When we first met via program, we were talking about Maddism. It's in the background, right? And I realized that I need to, bring this out more. We need to have more conversations. I need to infuse this into what you are doing. So what would Maddism say about the answer to that question about what's going to come from there?
Oh, man, that's all determined by our level of organization. It's all about organization. And I kind of share your sentiment, John. I'm a little pessimistic right now. Are you there? Hello?
I'm here.
You there? Okay. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. I'm a little pessimistic right now. It's just as we watch things fall, bring it back to gravity, and the bottom falls out, like Kelly said, we don't know what that's going to look like. And however it looks, however it unfolds, are we organized enough to deal with it as a people? And I don't know that we are nationally. Earlier you were talking about there's no one national voice. I don't know if we need a one national voice, but just we're going in so many different directions. We lack trust in each other. I'm actually pretty speechless when it comes to that question, bro. Right now, it is bad. A friend of mine just sent me a message. Trump deletes nationwide database on police misconduct, which was created after George Floyd's death.
And I want to just emphasize on it, right? When today, he did two things. Today, the first thing he did was do the pardon czar with Johnson, who I thought was brilliant move, right? I thought that she was someone who in the first administration she was unfairly incarcerated for years, and he released her, similar to what Obama did earlier when he released people who had been unfairly incarcerated in the federal system, and released them because they were guilty of nonviolent drug offenses, etc. Trump did things on the same lines with this, made her pardon czar, which brilliant. It's one of the things the Democrats don't do when they promote things they do to help poor people, etc. All the anti-violence stuff that was funded out of the vice president's office never became a part of the campaign. We never heard about it. We knew about it because we're from Newark, but it never was part of anything she campaigned on, even though the very successful violence prevention stuff programs came right out of the vice president's office. Didn't use Ras Baraka to talk about like his men's program and what he did. A lot of that should have been front and central. Didn't do it. He does this, and I know a lot of Black people are going to be putting this on there like, oh, this is great. And it is great, right? Like in terms of her pardons are, if she has power to like literally release people from jail, that's great. But in the very same day, he takes the whole registry of people who've been committing acts of police brutality, who've been beating up, killing, hurting Black people, and makes it disappear so they can't be prosecuted, right? So it is one thing that if those people who are like this, hey, Trump, part of me just hopes you're getting paid very well for it. The other part is, I mean, if you think that certain things are going on, there's a lot there that's not in our community's interest. And not just not in our community's interest. We're talking about 1930s. Like, not in our interest. And for a lot of people, that's very plain for us to see. And it's not because we're stupid, right? It's because we're actually seeing it. We're putting this together with what's happened historically. Does not mean that the Democratic Party is great. It does not mean that they have met all our needs. But it does mean that there are certain things that have gone beyond what is even normal for the last like 50 years. You're talking about you have to go to civil rights movement era to be able to see some of the things that are coming out of the Trump administration and the type of vitriol and the type of actions that others around him are directly taking by taking his cue. I want to introduce Goke. Goke is an artist, and he is an artist. He's releasing music, and we want to try to have more independent artists on. He has a series of releases. I know he will talk briefly about what some of those are as well. And as he joins the conversation, And as we shift from the conversation we're having to more about Madism, because I want to bring back to Madism because we have you on so much. Hakim, you are Newark's ambassador of hip hop. We have you on so much. We have not really talked about Madism, what it is. And I really do want you to explain it, talk about it, and we could delve into other topics that are hip hop related as well.
Cool.
From that.
So mad means a lot. Ism means pot. We gonna keep it moving means we won't ever stop. Madism is a hit record I put out with KRS-One. Well, myself and Tuffy as Channel Live put out with KRS-One in 1994, 95. Madism is a lot of weed. And we know weed, cannabis, has become a cultural phenomenon. But just in terms of, young Black and brown men in the late 80s, 90s use weed to network, to build, to create, we've created movements, hip hop as an entertainment complex, film, TV, the whole. Weed is always somewhere around. Weed is always lurking. Weed is the great connector. Madism is the great connector. And for a while when I showed up, people just said, "Hey, I know you know where the weed is at. Hey, you the Madism guy." So I decided to brand it and start a company, an entertainment company called Madism. Since 2015, I've been putting out music and other content, merchandise around the whole Madism movement. We've seen Madism cannabis explode commercially across the country. States have legalized it. Jersey's now legalized. New York, DC, Washington, DC and Washington State, California, of course, Illinois. Too many to really name. But we see that certain folks are getting locked out of the commerce. The same communities that took the hit, when it was illegal, don't seem to be benefiting as much now that it is legal. So Madism was created to kind of stake hip hop's claim in the cannabis industry. And that's kind of what Madism is. Of course, it follows my philosophy of peace, love, unity, safely having fun, using culture to uplift. That's why you have Heru, which is the Kemetic sun deity, to uplift, enlightenment. That's why it's gold and green. Of course, green, my last name, but gold is enlightenment and wisdom. So that's what we try to embody in everything that we do as Madism.
Dr. Kelly, I saw that in the background. I saw your facial expressions. You want to...
No. I was talking to my father-in-law. He came in asking me some questions.
Okay.
No, but you know what? When I saw Hakim saying Madism, I immediately thought back to the song, "Smoking Madism" with KRS-One. So now I know the connection. So I thought it, but wasn't for sure that that's what it was.
Okay. Yeah, Hakim is our ambassador to hip hop. He often brings KRS-One in Newark. KRS-One has a museum
/ school called the Temple of Hip Hop, 55 Ludlow in the South Ward. So Temple of Hip Hop is in the building. We've been over there for the last 3 years, courtesy of Mayor Ras Baraka. And so we got KRS-One in the bricks, Brick City native now.
Okay. So talk to. By the way, when we're off, make sure that your mics are muted. So that when you're talking, there's a lot of feedback. We start, Donna started off the evening by asking us the question, so are you still talking about the Super Bowl halftime show? And to which my answer for me was, I'm an English teacher by training. There is no way that I'm not going to try to break it down and have fun with it, because there's just so much that's there, to the point where people now, I notice, are breaking down different parts of the show in different weeks. Like in the last 2 days, it's like SZA's part is the chance to shine. And so many women are just like, oh, that dance was kind of cool. And it was kind of accessible, right? It was cute. It fit a body type, right? Like, and it was so. Although you have people breaking down different parts of the show at different times right now, so yeah, that's where I'm at. Super Bowl halftime show. Talk to me.
Yeah. Funny enough, I didn't see the halftime show the day of. I saw it like afterward, but I'm glad I did because I heard like there was some audio issues with like the live performance on TVs or certain TVs and everything. But when I saw it, I was just amazed. First of all, I just thought it would be something petty shot at Drake, and it still was. But it also was so much more than that, which is what broke it down for me. From like Serena Williams crip walking, like I had to first understand the controversy surrounding it, and then the deeper meaning behind her doing it on the stage in that moment. When previously she couldn't do it at like a place like the Wimbledon or other major tennis match that she won. So like the symbolic nature of like, well, you could do it at the Super Bowl in front of like all of these viewers was just amazing. And then aside from that too, the conversations that I feel like it sparked within so many people, I thought was way more beautiful than the show. Because first there was the outrage, like, what was that? You know what I mean? But I feel like a lot of times, what were those writers called? The muckrakers, right? Who would like reveal grotesque natures of things. I feel like even though like people were appalled by the show at first, it still drew their attention in to like look for what is good about it. And that attention is where you start to notice all of the other aspects of the show, the little hidden meanings in other areas that slowly piece together. And I just love the conversations that it sparks, even like the multiple interpretations of different scenes. I don't know if Kendrick has come out with anything like, oh no, this is what this part means, but just the fact that different people are interpreting in different ways. And for artists to be able to create a performance that has such a strong theme, but at the same time can be deeply interpreted in so many different ways, making it so relatable, was just amazing to me. That was just my feeling of it. I'm still breaking it down, I guess, and also watching the videos on it as well, personally.
Yeah, that was Kendrick is the master of getting his audience to peel back the layers. And you know, I saw it live when it was performed, and the audio issues did exist because I couldn't hear it. I could barely hear it. It was something wrong with the going on. I couldn't hear it and really soak it all in. So my initial reaction was kind of like, yeah, it was okay. It was cool. But as you peel back the layers, as you dig in, as you see all these tangential conversations happening about every little piece of the performance, you realize how dope the fact that we're still talking about it 2 weeks later shows you right then and there how powerful. It's not just us on this show. I got interviewed right before I hopped on, about a half hour ago, and we're talking about the halftime show, Kendrick Lamar's performance. And it's like, that's kind of like the ongoing conversation. And I thank God that there is a Kendrick Lamar, because we've been so inundated with this commercialized, capitalistic promotion of our culture, like just reinforcement of all the stereotypes. We needed somebody to break the mold, and he broke the mold. So it goes to him.
It was like they had real hip hop.
He did it live too. Yeah, like those were his, like, you know what I mean? He had background vocals there, but the main vocals, like, that was all live, walking around that stage. And I know how hard that is, especially now that I'm like trying to do more live performances. I've been jogging and running because it is hard to move around and then also like try to hit the notes, even with rapping, like the tonal modulations you do between like bar for bar to like, the effects on certain enunciations to make it match with like a certain instrument on the beat. All of those things like take breath. So for him to be able to do that while walking around the stage is just crazy to me. I was like, wow. I look back at those stories when they say Michael Jackson used to just run on the treadmill and like sing and stuff, and I'm like, I get it now. Like, I see why you would need that level of endurance. And the show is very long, and I think they said he went back and forth on the stage, like the full length of the court, which is just like, I don't know what he did to train for that. I need to see that video. I want to see like the training video.
He says he does laps. He says he does 6 miles a day. So he says that's what he does for training. Dr. Kelly, how do you weigh in on this?
Well, So I can't say much beyond amplifying what the brother said. I appreciate their comments. There are two concerns I have. One, and I've seen people talk about it because it didn't hit me immediately. I've seen other people talk about it. The fact that Serena Crip Walk and her sister was murdered by a Crip is problematic. It's concerning. So that's one, and I think people have kind of unpacked that. The other thing is that I think we have to be careful that throughout our history, because of our culture, because of the strength and the beauty and the passion and the things that we do, we always are at the forefront of American culture in terms of music and other forms of entertainment. But we have to be careful that we celebrate these moments, but they just become moments for us to celebrate, and it doesn't lead to a deeper transformation of the society. So that's the thing that I think that we have to be careful with, and I don't even think we here. I mean, in general, Black folk in general, because too often we are celebrating different cultural moments in this society, whether it's Marvin Gaye singing the national anthem, whether it's Public Enemy, whether it's we can go on down and name the different cultural icons and cultural moments that are very important in our history. But at the same time, the prison industrial complex is expanding. At the same time, things are being taken away, the rollback, the retrenchment of the civil rights movement and Black Power movement, the things that we fought for is being taken back. So we have to celebrate, but we still have to interrogate, and we have to take that moment. And the really challenge is, how do we make that moment something lasting and impactful in the culture, in a society? And the true, I guess my friend and colleague that you had on here before, Jonathan, Earl Henderson, he was talk about the need for cultural revolution in this society. So that's where I'm at with it. I was transfixed by, just like everybody else, by his performance. I thought it was an amazing performance, and Kendrick right now probably is one of my favorite hip hop artists. So
I think that what I was going to say, sometimes I think that we, acknowledge the moment, acknowledge what it's connected to, but sometimes I think we got to go back and be like, the moment is what the moment was supposed to be. Everyone else needs to react and should have been reacting all along in the ways that we should have been all along, right? Like, it's not about a performance inspiring a movement. It has to be about a movement that gets added to by the performance, a movement that gets in, like the entertainers of the civil rights movement didn't lead the civil rights movement. They set the soundtrack for it. And I think that we expect of our artist, right? Like, no, he's not, like, yes, it is a performance, and it was amazing because it got us to talk, but it's not the performance's fault if we just talk about it. It's not the performance's fault if we have not had things on the ground that were built in organizing, in which the artist was, as the artist should have been, simply like a soundtrack for the moment. But we got to understand what that moment is. I thought it was a perfect soundtrack for the moment because it stood out because it was the loudest shot back. It was the loudest clap back. Since he was doing all this foolishness, there has not been a loud national clapback. You were talking about a lack of leadership. He's not a leader. He's not supposed to be a leader. The reason why it got the attention that it got in the way that it got is because there's not a response. And that was the loudest, bravest. Like, the president was sitting there watching it. He left after the halftime show. The people around him got it, even if many of us did not, right? Like, they understood when the American flag is formed on the song, "Sit Down, Bitch, Be Humble," right? That was to the actual black bodies forming the American flag, and he's rapping right in the center of that, as in, we made this, all the other, but, as my wife pointed out, I didn't even notice that. My wife pointed that out. She was like, yo, I was like, was it more, like, some of my friends were like, Beyonce's was more radical, and she was like, no, and she's a Beyonce fan, like, she loves Beyonce, like, I love Beyonce too, and so but when she was like, no, Kendrick's was a little more radical. Did you see the American flag forming, him right in the center? And while the American flag was on full display, he was like, sit down, bitch, be humble.
He said that. He said it to Donald Trump. He said it right to him. Look,
yeah, so I mean, what you want, man? I'm like, so my friend, and you know, Todd Burrows was like, I like mine more radical.
When you said soundtrack, Jonathan, we said like a soundtrack, right? So I had a conversation today with my mom and Stacey Abrams and how inspiring Stacey Abrams is. My mom, and I'm like, Mom, you know, there's Stacey Abrams somewhere, everywhere in this country. There's Stacey Abrams there's a Stacey Abrams everywhere. You just have to move your focus. You have to move your line of sight, and you'll see in your own community there's a Stacey Abrams that needs your support, needs your help, needs your energy, needs your whatever. Kendrick Lamar, because he created the soundtrack, helps us now identify the real leaders in our community who are doing the work. Like it's not about what he's doing, him leading it, him giving us the blueprint for it's about
artists
inspiring us to do the work we should be doing anyway. And now you see the conversation. I mean, it really hit me last year when it was a white school teacher who's a teacher in a white school talked about how her entire school was Team Drake until Not Like Us. And in one weekend, it became Team Kendrick. And it's been Team Kendrick ever since. So that's like, okay, John, other educators now have the material and challenge our young people to now do the things we need to be doing moving forward, which is
English teachers at a high school and college level all over the United States have something new in their curriculum, in spite of not being able to teach it in multiple states. They got a chance to see this in Iowa, where you can't teach it, in Texas, where you can't teach it, in Mississippi, where you can't teach it, in Florida, where you can't teach it, right? I mean, they equipped educators all over the country. If you have a conversation about a Super Bowl, you engaged in some real education. I'm like, for me, there's no but, because the but is on us, not on the artist. The but is on, what we do. Like, this is, like, I'm just like, Kendrick, thank you for the gift, brother. Thank you for the gift.
Yeah, we definitely have to stop looking at entertainers as leaders.
But they are gift givers.
Yes,
that make it easy for the rest of them.
As an artist,
they are great. They're great messengers. They're great messengers.
Great messengers. Yeah, but the on the ground, everyday critical analysis, how to implement.
That's something else.
Work.
That's a whole different. That's a whole different. Yeah,
that's a whole different
lane right there.
Right. But a lot more people are going to be listening to those people because of that performance.
That A minor bar was killer.
When you hear the entire arena say it, it's over, man. It's a wrap.
I heard that and I knew there's no response to that. Like, because at that point he done tripled down on it and now he hit you with like, nah.
Trying to strike a chord, right?
The whole arena, man. Oh my god.
Yo, this might be worse than 50 Ja Rule.
Oh, it's worse.
Oh yeah.
It's worse. Yeah. I mean, it's not even close anymore, right? I mean, it passed Ether, right, before Euphoria.
Yeah, it surpassed all of that. We're past KRS and Shan, all of that now.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, you got lawsuits coming now. Like, KRS
and Shan was just the boroughs. KRS and Shan had Bronx and Queens going up at it, man. But now this is a whole other thing right here.
Right.
Drake suing is so not hip hop.
Right. With Kendrick Lamar and Drake, like, we won the war against Canada before Trump, right? Like, we didn't even know we were at war with Canada. Trump's like, we're at war with Canada. It's like, what, were you listening to are you like on Kendrick's side? Like, why are we going to war with Canada? It was just a song, man. It was not supposed to be real.
Hey, I have to run. I wish I could stay, but I have to run because I'm here with
Thank
family
you,
stuff.
Dr. Kelly.
Peace,
I
brother
appreciate
Kelly,
it.
man. Peace,
Thank you
man.
for
Good to
the
see
thank
you
you
for
all
the
for
strict
having me.
minute, man.
Hey, I
It is an honor
appreciate
to
y'all,
have
I
you.
man.
haven't seen you in a while. Good seeing you, man.
Yeah, you too, family. It's good seeing y'all. I mean, I'm gonna come
Word.
back next week if Jonathan let me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Good seeing y'all, brothers. Good meeting y'all.
Peace,
Take
man.
care.
All right. Take
Good
care.
seeing you. Have a good night.
Good night. Welcome back, DJ Rhino.
Yeah, what's
What's
good,
going
man?
on?
Chilling, man. I just wanted to, you know me, man. I'm always trying to bring some information, man. First off, before I say anything, man, I gotta say, because this was like big news, man, when it hit, man. Miss Wallace. I don't know if anybody spoke on this, man, but
Right.
Miss Valletta Wallace, Biggie Smalls' mom's, man, passed today, man. And
Right.
that one hurt, man, because we love Biggie's mom. We were riding for we always riding for Biggie, so we was riding for his moms too. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, that one hurt, man. I know. I'm not sure what the cause of her death was, but I know years ago she was fighting breast cancer. I don't know if that came back or whatever it was, man. But whatever it is, man, we lost a great queen, man. You know what I'm saying? She represented her son, to the highest, man, and in everything that he did, man. She was behind him. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so that's a great loss, man. So rest in peace, Miss Valletta Wallace, man. She feels like how in the hood when you got like your friends' moms or somebody like that, somebody in the hood, their moms is like your moms too in a way. That's kind of like how Miss Wallace felt like. She was like the neighborhood mom. So rest in peace, Miss Wallace, man. That was a shock, honestly, man. I didn't think she was going through anything at that time. So yeah, rest in peace, Miss Wallace.
Yeah.
And I also heard the rapper Tiger, his mom's passed too recently, today I believe. Yeah, lost his moms too, man. So I mean that's heavy losing your moms, man. I haven't gone through that, man, but I got people who's gone through that, man, and that's it's not an easy deal, man. You know what I'm saying? They struggle through it always. You know what I'm saying? And I can only imagine, man. So rest in peace to Tiger's moms, rest in peace to Biggie's moms, rest in peace to Biggie. You know. And the brother on my shirt right here. Today is the day we lost this brother, Malcolm X,
Right.
aka El Haj Malik El Shabazz.
His birthday, right?
Nah, this is the
No,
day
no.
we lost him.
Oh wow.
At
February 18th is his
Audubon,
birthday.
yeah, at Audubon Ballroom.
I think I'm in May.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
Nah,
May.
yeah.
You must not have been
May
out. So you
19th
must
is
be
his
in Florida.
Right.
You up here?
May 19th is his born.
You
I'm
know
thinking-
it's not no May.
No, I'm thinking Biggie's birthday. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking
Okay.
Biggie.
Yeah, Biggie's birthday is coming up March 9th.
So
Yeah.
I got Biggie on my mind. That's why.
Right.
Because up here it's just as cold as the politics.
Yeah. But on this day in 1965, we lost this brother at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, New York City. Rest in peace, Malcolm X, man. That was a crazy ordeal, man. And it's still talked about. You know what I'm saying? People who were involved and how that whole thing went down and how it was constructed and organized and the whole thing, man. You know what I mean? But yeah, today is the day we lost that. Lost the prince, man, the crown prince, man. Malcolm X, rest in peace. What's another thing? Another one, I don't know how many people know about this brother. He was my brother, and he was definitely a brother to many on the underground scene and hip hop, man. Brother named Grand Ghetto Communicator. I gotta say, rest in peace to the Grand Ghetto Communicator. This was the brother coming out of Brooklyn, New York City. He first came on the scene, strangely enough, somebody pulled him in at the Source magazine. He wrote an article about his situation. He was homeless. He was homeless in the streets, man. But he was talking about his situation and how he was surviving and how he also used hip hop to keep his spirits up and to push him forward and what he was going through. The name of the article was Asked Out. If you look that up, it was a Source magazine article called Asked Out. It was written by Grand Ghetto Communicator. It was called. It said Ghetto Communicator. He calls himself Grand Ghetto. But he wrote this article and it was so impactful, man. It really hit a lot of people, man, because a lot of people related to just some of the stuff he was talking about, because it was real descriptive about, New York City and just the struggles and just being out there. You know what I'm saying? Just, you know what I mean? And it really impacted a lot of people that read that. The source was like the hip hop Bible back in the day, man. People read that article, man, and it really, really made a lot of noise. And from there, he ended up doing other articles. You know what I'm saying? My man Merge, Chris Calloway, he was the art director at Source Magazine at that time. This is the early '90s, and so he was, he was also connected with Ghetto, and pulling him in and doing some articles and work for magazines and stuff. Also, Bones Malone, big ups to my man Bones Malone. He was another MC, journalist. He was one of them cats that was out there, man. Yeah, definitely. So. But yeah, Grand Ghetto. But the thing about Grand Ghetto too, he was just an ill MC, man. This dude was one of those dudes, and no lie, he was one of those dudes. If he had the mic, after a while, you had to let him know, hey, look, we got other MCs, we got other MCs up here. We're gonna have to pass this mic, bro. Yo, he was one of those. You know what I'm saying? But Ghetto was so dope, man. You let him ride for a while. You let him ride because this was a dude who had the illest Brooklyn street stories in his rhymes, man. He had a lot of Brooklyn stories, man. Story rhymes about him, riding on the train, and he met up with a girl, and he met up with he had some rhyme where he met up with a chick, jumped in the Jeep with a chick, and they riding around, and they did their thing, and then she drops him off, and then he's riding on the train, and him and his boy, he meets up with his boy, and then they end up robbing his cat for a radio and all that. It was, the ill Brooklyn stories, man. It was just that New York thing, man, where he was painting a picture, man. You could see everything he was talking about, man. And Ghetto was just one of those dudes, man. I remember when Lauryn Hill's album came out, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, man. He came to my crib, and we was just vibing on just how dynamic that album was, man. It was like we didn't say words. We just kind of looked at each other and we just felt the vibe and just listened to the album. We didn't really say much, you know what I'm saying? Because it was just so impactful, you know what I mean? The last time I saw Grand Ghetto was in the early 2000s with me, my man Malik Griffin, Tane One, my man J. Rue, rest in peace. Saadi Ali, and so many of us, man. We were all, the whole Boom Squad, and all of us were working on a magazine called Energy Magazine. He was going to be one of the journalists, and one of the artists, because he was also one of the people who would do a lot of flyers and stuff. When we were doing the Hyperbolic Lounge in the Lower East Side, New York City, he would do a lot of flyers and do flyers and stuff for us as well. Big ups to the Hyperbolic Lounge, because a lot of people came to that spot. It was back in 94, early 94. Outsiders, the Fuji Camp, Massive Staff, so many people, man. All of the graph crews used to come through. Talib them came through. John Forte brought Talib Kweli back in the early days, before Talib was known like that. You know what I'm saying? Slang Ton, rest in peace. He was there. It was a big deal, man. Back in '94. It was the early days of '94, and that was the time when we used to have to pull the mic from Grand Ghetto, man. Rest in peace, Grand Ghetto Communicator, man. We gonna miss that brother, man. I got tapes. I got old tapes and stuff that I converted to MP3, man. Anybody, you can hit me up, man, and I'll hit you with it, man, because you got to hear this brother, man. He was also featured in Stretch and Barbito's documentary, Radio That Changed Lives. You got to check that out too. But rest in peace, Grand Ghetto. Something I just want to hit, man. We talking about people passing, and I hate to be the one to bring all of this darkness. I know we were talking about other stuff, but I'm bringing a lot of darkness with this hip hop information. But I have to say this, man. We lost a lot of people. We're losing a lot of people in hip hop. But something that somebody had posted online, and we really got to look at, man. We losing a lot of people. Back in the 80s, I remember there was a lot of talk because the crack era was going on, and there was a lot of gun gun violence happening at that time. You know, a lot of people thought, you know, in hip hop, you know, our generation period, the X generation and generations after was going to be, you know, dying with a lot of gun violence. And there was gun violence that took place. But a lot of our hip hop people, man, a lot of us, man, especially our generation, we're losing our people, man, through bad health situations, bad health conditions. You know what I'm saying? We lost Nate Dogg with a stroke, Craig Mack, AIDS, Prodigy, you know, when he choked, Big Pun, heart attack, Heavy D, blood clot, Biz Markie, diabetes, Clark Kent, colon cancer, Fife Dog, diabetes, Prince Markie D from the Fat Boys, heart failure, Black Rob, cardiac arrest, K Slade, COVID, John Singleton, stroke, Andre Harrell, heart failure. You know what I'm saying? You know, Mr. C, kidney disease. You know, we lost so many people, man. We lost a lot of people, man, with just from health situations, man. We really got to focus on our health. My man posted online. Big ups to my man Ty. He posted online about how, you know, one of the biggest things that's killing black men is our ego. And I said, yes, because our ego is what will keep us from going to the doctor. Our ego is what will keep us from, you know, getting with the right woman. Our ego is what will get us into violent situations because we can't control our emotional, you know, we can't handle our emotions. You know, our ego always gets us into things, man. You know what I'm saying? We got to check our ego, check our health. Let's just check ourselves, man, because we got to be here for our families. We got to be here for ourselves, first and foremost. Got to be here for our families, be here for our communities, be here for the future, to be able to give this information, to continue to give information to each other, man. And that's just where I'm at with it, man. I don't want to keep it going on dark, man. You know, it's I know I brought some darkness, but I'm trying to bring y'all some truth and information as well, man. It's hip hop.
Well, it wasn't just darkness; it was some light too, because
that was actually the light, actually.
Right.
Yeah,
Because
you
you
were
talked about
honoring
solutions. Right? You talked about not that this is where we're going and this is where we'll always be. You talked about this is where we're headed and this is what we need to change, right? Like, you know, you're like, sometimes our ego, you're talking about the problem. You're like, our ego is the problem, right? We don't want to get mental health help. We think we can do all this stuff on our own.
Yeah.
We don't want to go to the doctor. And you're right. Marrying the right woman will help you because the right woman will make sure you go to the doctor, right?
But your ego can block that from happening.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. And all of us have been parts in the relationships where we know we needed to make the right decision, right? We knew there was our ego and there was the right decision.
Right.
We know there's our ego, we know there's the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you got to be like, in the end, if you love yourself, you're loving her.
Right? And you make the right decision for yourself.
Right. If you love yourself, you're making the right decision. Right.
That's
so
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's all I got, man.
All right.
Also, I think it's pretty cool that you just honored those people. I think honoring especially Black history is extremely important. I feel like there's always an attack, especially on our history. I feel like there's a lot of Black history that is erased, that continues to be erased. I feel like a lot of people search for meaning that they can't find because they don't have access to that history. So I think it's super cool. Like the moment you started sharing it, I was like, I wish, you know, I heard that knowledge more often on different days, because there's definitely different Black people who did different things. Like there should be a day for probably every single day of the year should probably be a day for hundreds of Black people, because we literally built this country, but
it isn't.
It is, but it's not talked about like it should be. Is what, like,
unless you watch the Super Bowl and you see that.
You know,
the
like
American calendar gives us a month, but you know, I mean,
right.
Now these types of conversations actually happen more than we give ourselves credit for. I mean, John, you've been doing this show, Rhino, for how long? Since 2019.
I've been doing this show actually since 2012.
Yeah. This is like 2012.
2012. You know, like, so, you know, that's every week. That's planning. That's, you know, inviting folks to have these types of conversations. I was saying to my mother earlier, like, there's a what's the woman's name in Stacey Abrams? There's a Stacey Abrams everywhere It's just a matter of us tuning into it. I could tell, Goki, like just the way you carry yourself, you have these conversations every day. You know, I know what my Facebook feed has been like since I've had a Facebook. You know, the path that I'm on, that's all we just got to keep feeding people and bringing people into our circle. You know, and yeah, so
yeah, I recently dropped.
And big ups to Goki too, man, because you got new music out, right?
It does.
Yeah, I recently dropped the track. I've been pushing that pretty hard. It talks about Black history and American history and how there's one and the same. Funny enough, I've had conversations debating a bunch of people online because, you know, I'm running promotion on it. And they always run into those people like, you know, F you, we don't owe you anything. I'm like, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about reparations.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah, you're right. I do have these conversations, but you know, I always appreciate hearing new history, especially like honoring people, because like I said, I'm big on always honoring, especially like Black history. I feel like that's something that needs a lot more attention, and it's actively being attacked by, you know, the literal policies like critical race theory cannot be taught and stuff like that. So I really think it is important for us to preserve our history because they don't want us to remember things hoping that us forgetting will make the world better. But you know, we have that empty hole when you don't know where you come from, when you don't know your history, especially when it's like misled, lied about, manipulated, etc. But I feel like the oral history always contains that truth, the one that's passed down, you know, from parent to child and so on and so forth. That's when we really start to unravel like the truths that define us. And I think that's really important.
Cool, and this is a good segue into closing out our program. It is 9:00. I want to thank all of our guests, the guests who came on. Thank you to Aliya Clark and New Direction for coming on, talking to us about the real important role they play in violence prevention and the thinking around that. They're going to be back on. Thank you also to Newark Westward Councilman Dupré Kelly. Who came on, who was talking about Ras Baraka for governor, right? And a lot of these a lot of the stuff we're talking about does center around this campaign. I think this campaign is important for multiple reasons. I think the Democratic Party nationally needs this campaign. The weakness in the Democratic campaign nationally is that it cannot talk to men, it cannot talk to Black men, whereas Ras Baraka uniquely had policies in place that talk to that and practical solutions for problems in a way that makes us understand that we can all do well, right? We do not need to fight each other over these things, and the people who are making us fight are making us fight over crumbs, and they're leaving with all the loot. And I think that he has the unique ability to spread that message, not just in the state of New Jersey, but nationally. Also, thank you, Kenya.
Real quick, just say right before I got on the show, me and my boy, remember G Dub?
Yeah.
We were just listening to Councilman's first recording with me and the fellas here back in the day, and it was a song called "Let the Leader Lead." And we're just talking about how look at what he's doing today. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Nice. Yeah. Thanks also to Kenya Tyson. She's the founder and executive director of the Black Massacre Project, and Asia Norton for setting that up. That was a scary segment, right? That was a scary segment. Thank you, Ryan Talmadge, for coming on to discuss your one for the Central Ward Council, and of course, Dr. Kelly Harris for jumping in, and Hakim, always, Rhino, everybody, at Goke for coming on, and we will see you all next week. Any last shout outs?
Peace.
All right.
Wonderful weekend, y'all.
Love.
Peace. And shout out to the beautiful, wonderful Ashley Renee.
Peace, y'all.